Come. I found over 1,700 times in the Word of God where this word is used, come, and that's not coming, the rest of the comes, but that's just come on. Preaching my heart out for 45 minutes to an hour on that one word, come. And it was one of our Lord's favorite words. Come unto me, come and drink, come and dine. Jesus said, come, come. And it goes on and 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 on. In its application. Come. What did Jesus say to his disciples? Come. There's no room for discussion, friend. Guess what? Come. Come. It commands obedience. Come. How many of you had the Holy Ghost come in you? He was crucified for you. He died for you. He did everything for you. It's time for you to... On that one word, come. And it was one of our Lord's favorite words. Come unto me. Come and drink. Come and dine. Jesus said, come, come. And it goes on and 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 on.
He called himself a hillbilly, wrote an elegy. His problem and his trouble is he went back and he doubled down on the fascism and the lies, and then he made a fatal crime. Couch fucker, what's your deal? J.D. Vance is cut by Peter Attil. Couch fucker, why must he lie? We must stop Project 2025. But in 2005 you wrote back then only one time. I felt femininely when I saw that movie about New Jersey. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I must deny. And that's when J.D. Vance said he wants trans people to go die. Couch fucker, what's your deal? J.D. Vance is cut by Peter Attil. Couch fucker, why must he lie? We must stop Project 2025. At the RNC, he felt maybe I'll be free if I take up on this task, being MAGA starting grass to take over the country. I think J.D. Vance needs a swirly. Couch fucker, what's your deal? J.D. Vance is cut by Peter Attil. Couch fucker, why must he lie? We must stop Project 2025. Couch fucker, what's your deal? J.D. Vance is cut by Peter Attil. Couch fucker, why must he lie? We must stop Project 2025.
Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack, 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 Riverboat Jack. That's what I'm talking about. First time singing the songs for Riverboat Jack. Shout out. I don't know what I'm doing really, but I got passion. And that's what it's about. It's all about passion. Where she streams, all that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack, 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 Riverboat Jack.
Hello. How we doing, folks? Swallow girl, I can't. I had a lot to chew. I had a mouthful. How we all doing, folks? Oh my god. Ugh. Whew. Whew.
Bezos Bucks.
Nightlight Plushy Jesus, thank you for subscribing with Prime. We are so mad. Yeah. Hello, axolotls with cream. Drawing fan art of a fictional character for the first time since high school? Hell yeah. Hope you're having a good time. Oh boy. One second here. Let me fix a thing. Twitch keeps telling me to accept these new terms of service, and I, out of spite, refuse to, so I just keep deleting the element on the web page that puts the banner over over chat. I'm guessing the green sweater was the alternate outfit? Yes. Danger Days, unironically, I have no why, but for whatever reason, Put was flagged by the auto mod. Again, if you guys get mad at like the auto modding, like it's not the mods being like vindictive, it's the fucking bizarre bot over on Twitch. Do you have to accept the terms if I want the banner to go away? But I'm not doing that. Oh, one more thing. Also, just a reminder, folks, don't ban evade. Just as a friendly reminder, if you get banned, don't do that. And also, if you are evading the ban, do a better job of evading it. You know, like, do better. All right. You programmed the bot to be vindictive? Ah, Paladin. I should have known. Hello, Lady Raincloud. Just posting this because Bernie actually gets fired up a bit. He might actually give us some hope. Is this the Anderson Cooper thing?
Those tariffs.
It is the Anderson Cooper thing. Ooh. I know, but also fuck him. Van Briggs, I know, but fuck him. I hate Twitch so goddamn much. I resent the fact that I've spent years of my life building up a platform and making them money, and then they turned around, stabbed me in the back, and now they take almost all of the revenue from the channel over on Twitch. And fuck them. Hello, big massive dumps. Whew. I'm like hanging on by a thread. How's everyone? Sanity check, everyone. How you doing? On a scale of 1 to 10, how Joker-fied are you? $8.5. Yeah, I think I'm at like a 9. I think I'm at like a 9 out of 10. I had a pretty bad mental breakdown yesterday. Five, 8, 9, 5/7. So like less than 1, or like are you saying a 5 or a 7, Holly Hoomst? A 6? That's pretty good. I would say 10, but I've already reached limits I didn't know were possible, so 8. Yeah, yeah, we are all nervous people driving. Absolutely. 7, it can fluctuate to a 9. 7 or so. A 7 is high for me. Yeah. Tummy hurts from the nerves, so 7.5. That's fair. What are we describing? The level to which you have been Joker-fied? I haven't Joker-fied, but I'm still filled with anxiety and stress. That's fair. Is the audio a little crinkly tonight? It might be. I did turn up the volume as you guys usually expect. Yeah, request. I can turn it back down, I suppose. Or I can turn off the equalizer. I don't know if that helps at all. You're peaking a bit? All right, I'll turn it down. Maybe we'll go to 30 on the mic gain. It's Friday then, Saturday, Sunday, what? Just done with everyone's bullshit? That's fair, it's Friday, everyone. That's better? Yeah. Cool. It's a bit leftist audio flavored. Well, fuck. I don't know if you guys keep this up. I don't know. Like I've literally been trying to fix this shit for so long. Every time I try and fix it, it seems like it breaks more. Is it better or worse now? Because typically this is around the audio level I've had it, but then you all complain that it's very quiet. So I doubled the audio gain. So this is better? Okay. Cool. Oh god. You got back into Baldur's Gate 3? Hell yeah. That is a good life choice right there. There we go. Your hair is winter fire. Thank you. What is a Joker moment? Are you familiar with the Joker, a character from the Batman franchise? I mean, the thing you're asking me to do, Dragon Wing, is not possible for me to do with my audio setup. So the Jonkler, like from the Adam West series, yes. Yep, nailed it. Playing my 2000 plus mod Skyrim. You know, I've never played like a fully kitted out like Skyrim thing. Maybe a fun community project sometime would be to like get you guys to compile like a list of mods, and then I play whatever monstrosity you spit out on stream. That could be fun. Ooh, RimWorld mods? Hell yeah. Play Minecraft? I do like Minecraft. I'm chuckler pilled? What the fuck? God. Hey, Thistles for Eyes. The problem is, will it work and can you stream it? Yeah. I'm sleepy and I can't wake up. That's been my last week. Do corruption streams like Vine Sauce, but you tilt the politics cartridge? I must be old because I have no idea what that means. Oh, the coup guillotine is a great song. Brianna Arabia. Hello. Did you miss all the fun? Nah. Mods for what game? Skyrim? Yeah, Skyrim. Also, can I just say, I don't know. I do not know how much of a structured stream I have today. I did not prep very much at all. I'm onboarding a new editor soon, and so I did all of the work I needed to do today to get them on board. And so hopefully I will be less stressed in the coming weeks ahead. But I had to do a lot of work prior to
Eliezer
that.
Perez, that guy from both the Seder and Dr. Mike Jubilees, charges $500 for debate bro coaching lessons.
No. Bullshit. Sake Tanuki, you are, that is bullshit. That is bullshit. I need to see what the inside of one of his debate bro coaching lessons is. Holy shit. Fuck. I was just thinking about that guy today because I was getting a bunch of timestamps. God damn. Just play video games, we can make up the news. Damn. Also, Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Keeping this stream alive, keeping it afloat. Oh my god, Paladin, how the fuck did how did you find that so fast? Are you fucking kidding me? You guys can't see that. Burp. Now you can. Oh my god. Welcome to Street Debates. Oh my god.
Eleazar Perez has been getting a lot of attention recently. Feeling like a proud papa. Good. Wish I had this guy's name.
You know, I always love seeing the first guy who says your name, and the first guy is you know, a paid Russian op. And then you've got, oh, Andrew Wilson, the guy who wanted to debate me about my father being disappointed in me at one point. And then I said, no, I won't debate you because I don't believe in cuckoldry without the consent of your wife. And then he never responded to me after that. Man, this is some top tier content you're advertising yourself with, bud.
Good. Wish I had this guy's name. I just started following him on XGS. Just
Why would you advertise yourself with an Itsy Bitsy Spider remix? Why would you? I'm so confused about literally every aspect of this.
This was so on point. And then there was this Latino kid who sits like across from him.
Hands up!
Get out of here.
Make me.
Get out.
Make me.
I'm not gonna
Make
fight
me.
you.
Be
You're
emotional.
talking
Hey,
fast.
Back up. You just.
Sir.
Yeah. So you guys are pro-abortion?
We're pro-choice, pro.
Oh, I see. So by street debates, he means he harasses strangers. Gotcha. Holy fuck, dude.
Women, pro-family.
What about this? And a dead
Well, that's not.
fetus is right there.
Well, you weren't listening to the conversation like I
don't
just
give a
asked
shit.
you.
Let me educate you.
Sure. Let's hear.
When they have, okay, so first off, your tone.
Get back. Hey, get back.
Oh, you know, that's also very interesting how he places the camera as if he's just holding something relatively innocuous, but the second in this trailer that it shows us what he's actually holding, it's a fucking hand with an aborted fetus in it. Why are you guys getting all emotional? Why are you getting emotional?
Hey, get back.
And they have, okay, so first off, your
I'm sorry, I didn't realize he'd been baptized by Milkshake.
tone.
Get back. Hey, get back.
I thought you were trying to have a dialogue.
Well, that's why I came out here because no one agrees with me. I know that. I know where I am. I know what city I'm in.
I have a PhD in math,
Okay.
so I think actually you're
Perfect.
the one that doesn't understand.
Perfect.
So
You use abstract concepts that are rooted in realism,
I'm
that are
asking
rooted
you
in
a
absolute
question
truth,
to
but you can't
continue the
justify
debate.
them. Okay. And you know why they're killing themselves, right?
As far as trans rights go,
That's not a trans right. You just said they can't consent.
right.
So let's see the contradiction again.
What the fuck, dude? This guy's a moron. Like, I revisited his appearance on Dr. Mike the other day. It's incredible how far
For your lesson.
I'm not giving this guy a single goddamn cent. But thank you for the $25 dono. It's incredible how far in like the conservosphere saying things with like a completely unearned sense of confidence. How far that will take you in this entire circle is insane. You know, like it is literally just 2 + 2 = 5. 2 + 2 = 5. Am I right, people? 2 + 2 is 5. And it's just like them doing that every single day. It's crazy. When my mom says we have Ben Shapiro at home, this is what she means. Honestly, this isn't even Ben Shapiro at home. This is like, because Ben Shapiro is like a propagandist. This guy's just doing it for the love of the game. He's more like if you had a much more conservative Destiny, you know? But like, who is just dedicated to being wrong about 100% of things instead of like, you know, 50 to 25% of things. God. This is Ben Shapiro at the basement.
You don't understand.
You're very rude to someone.
I don't care. Yeah, you're emotional. That's why women shouldn't vote. They're emotional.
Hormones, because you have very natural
Yes,
things going
when you're on your
There's
period, you
nothing-
change.
Oh. Dog. He believes women shouldn't vote because they're too emotional. I guarantee you that this guy who thinks women are too emotional, I guarantee you he watches like what's his guy, the guy who does the dead rat clock? Well, what's his name again, chat? You know who he is. He's really famous. Asmongold, thank you. Yes, Asmongold, the guy with the tooth wall. I guarantee you, this guy like grew up watching like reactionary YouTubers shitting on like Captain Marvel for being like a woman, and like he like goes apoplectic whenever he sees like a black woman as like the lead in a video game. I guarantee you. Guys who say women are too emotional to vote 100% of the time are absolutely enraged by seeing like women or minorities in like video games or movies. 100% of the time.
You change as a person, so yes. Oh, now you don't like it. When I match your energy, you don't like it, right?
I'm good.
I'm good too.
Are you fucking dense? Are you dense? Are you using fucking linguistics?
So logic is hard for you.
You know what?
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic and I saw propaganda like this and it was deeply traumatizing.
So what you follow is not propaganda.
I'm sorry, what is it? What does the side say? This is the oppressed person in our culture?
I'm sorry.
They're not killing themselves because of people like me. They're killing themselves because people like you tell these kids that if we do not affirm their gender, they're gonna kill themselves.
I love birth control here too.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry.
They're not killing themselves because of people like me. They're killing themselves because people like you tell these kids that if we do not affirm their gender, they're gonna kill themselves.
I'm so sorry. His argument that he thinks that the reason like trans youth commit suicide is because people tell them that they're going to kill themselves if others don't affirm their gender. Does he think that like suicide is not something that just like occurs to people like naturally as like a consequence of being alive and under like a lot of suffering? Yeah, no, he's just lying. Like, well, wait, let's see. What is his like financial motive here? Like how strong is it?
Eleazar Perez has
Dude has 50,000 subscribers on on YouTube. All right. How about on X? How big did he get? 16,000. Look, I don't think this guy is big enough to be doing it for the paycheck. Like genuinely, I don't think he's big enough to be doing it for the paycheck. Like, there's no way he makes enough money doing this. I think this guy's just stupid as fuck. Yeah. He's working his way up to making the paycheck. I don't know, but like not everyone can do that. Like you'd have to have somebody like financing you as you go on your way up. It doesn't. Maybe. I don't know.
Eliezer.
Oh wait, we didn't finish watching the trailer. I'm sorry. I got distracted by how stupid that point was.
If we do not affirm their gender, they're gonna kill themselves.
I love birth control here too.
Do you support abortion too? Yeah. Do you support the kids dying in Palestine right now? So how do you reconcile those two beliefs then? You support abortion, but you don't support those kids dying in Palestine.
Checkmate, liberal. Oh my god. Yeah, nah, this is psychopath shit. Like, I think he genuinely believes this stuff and is just a psycho. Why the itsy bitsy spider? Because he's a psychopath. His brain is broken. This is the kind of guy who doesn't give a shit about anything. He'll say whatever for attention. Yeah, he has concepts of grifting, but not a coherent grift roadmap. He had crazy eyes. Oh god. Okay, just real quick. Speaking of crazy eyes, there was a lady in the Dr. Mike debate who just had absolute crazy eye disease. Trying to see if I can find her. No.
Eleazar Perez used Psyshock. It's super effective.
Maybe not in this one. Was it in this one?
Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. I really appreciate that. It's super effective. You got me. Hey, was it this lady? Also, it's crazy. Like they can really only find like one rotating cast of these like conservative Trump supporters who want to go on these shows. Like the amount of people that are in the anti-vax Jubilee compared to the Sam Cedar Jubilee, it's nuts. I can't find the crazy-eyed one. She had the craziest eyes. All right, whatever. It's a horror song, but like, is he the itsy bitsy spider who's getting fucked up by the water spout? Like, I don't know. Like, what is the
Trump?
What is the issue here? What's his deal? And like, clearly his deal is that he just wants to like get people angry. Like, it's just owning the libs writ large. But like, you should invite Perez on the show. He's super desperate for clout. He'll show up. But like, to what end? What would I get out of that? You know? Like, it would just be him saying horrible things to me, and I feel like I would feel bad for no gain on my end. Can we make more rain then? With some of the chatters here? Absolutely. You guys can make it rain. Sake Tanuki appreciation post, same Jazz Dog. Content, make it an interview. Honestly, that'd be more interesting to me. But the issue is I want to talk to people who actually care about the things that they say, you know? That's kind of the issue I run into with a lot of these folks. That's kind of the issue I run into. I want to talk to people who care about things. So who hurt you? Do these people believe in homunculi or something? Like babies are fully grown at all stages of development? I mean, basically, yeah. These people believe that at the moment, like, the sperm goes into the egg, that is a baby. Good night, Charles. Yeah, I mean, like, that makes sense to me, Gamer G. Like, I think for me, like, what killed my interest in debate was very specifically Alex Stein. If any of you know who Alex Stein is, dude like brought a black man onto the set of his Blaze television show in chains and like force fed him a banana as part of a bit. And he'd go on like debate shows and talk about how 9/11 was like holograms and shit. And like he just kept getting rewarded with more and more conservative attention. And it's just like, oh, they don't, you know, if they can find the most psychopathic ideas or people who are willing to say the most psychopathic things, that's all they care about. You know, it doesn't matter what they believe. It doesn't matter if they're working to actually build anything. They just need mouthpieces. He also repeatedly sexually harassed AOC. Yep. On camera, too. I also don't really believe that that guy's religious. Is that mean of me to say? I don't really believe him when he says that he believes in God. I think that if he actually believed in the kind of God he tends to describe on these shows, like, he would act way differently with other people. Yeah, exactly, Anadexis. You get what I mean. I know one of the worst parts of this whole thing is explaining to the Galadin that the reason that some of her friends aren't concerned with her issues is because basically a lot of America is horribly broken right now. Yeah. It's not great here. Not great. We got itsy bitsy spider street debaters running rampant. Did your church ever hand out those little plastic fetuses? Oh god, no. No. But I also didn't go to a lot of church. My dad went to a seminary, and so he learned everything he needed to know about religion. He didn't graduate, but he went until almost graduation, and that's basically like having gone to seminary. It's technically correct. Plastic? Ours was rubber. Back in my day, we didn't have plastic or rubber fetuses. We made do with ones we whittled out of wood. Yeehaw! Like a homeschool religion? Kind of, minus the school aspect. Like, we'd go to church, but like the church was non-denominational, but at home, my dad treated it like more of a, you know, it's a whole thing. It's hard to explain. Hello, Two Dads Smoochin'. Okay. So, folks, I have. Well, no, I've been wanting to talk about this. Let's talk about this real quick. So, folks, there's this online service called Netflix, and a lot of you may be familiar with it to some degree. They're apparently testing a new AI feature that will help you to find things to watch based on your mood. This is like a whole thing that they're doing now, and reading through it, it's genuinely baffling to me. The new search engine will let users look for shows using far more specific terms, including the subscriber's mood, for example, the company said. And will go well beyond genres or actors' names. And it's just like, why would I want this? Like, how is this useful to me in a way of like offering anything new or novel? I know what my mood is. I can search for movies by genre or by actor or by year. I know what I like. Why would I offload my desires onto a machine that's basically a Google search result? Like, I don't even understand. You don't need an AI partnership with OpenAI in order to partner, in order to sort things by mood. Honestly, what it sounds like to me is just another way of OpenAI getting access to all of our browsing data on Netflix. If I have to be completely honest with you, that's what this seems more like to me, and not really any useful utility to any of us. I don't know. I was talking about why this made me upset on Blue Sky earlier, and it's just like the people behind this technology who run these multi-million, billion-dollar companies, they literally think you are all so stupid. They think we are all just hogs in their content machine. They look at us like, farmers or ranchers might look at factory farms. And it's just, they expect us to just drink the slop. And also, they think we're too dumb to know what we like. And it sucks. I hate it. We pay Netflix for the privilege to be part of their product catalog. It's sick, honestly. I've said it before, Jack, the AI companies are scrambling to insert LLMs into other applications because no one is using it. We scored an excessive amount of money to insert AI into a supermarket app. It's not even about scraping data because we give nothing back to them. Yeah, I genuinely, I don't know what the end game is, other than they think they're bringing about some kind of techno god, a god from the machine, and we are not doing that. Their investment isn't going to pay off into an infinite money glitch, but they're all throwing money into AI. they're gonna get that. I just don't I don't know, like the end game here is just an absurd vision, and I have no idea what's going to happen when this entire industry collapses, but it will, you know? And I just it's going to be bad, I guess, globally. Yeah, that's true. Unlike NFTs, they can't bail and sell it to suckers. That is absolutely true. I do find it very funny that there are very dumb people in the tech bro industry who do think we are very close to Roko's Basilisk Q-Berry Shortcake, but it's just like, damn, not even close, baby. Also, fun fact for those of you who like going into thrift stores and stuff. If you find yourself like I learned about this the other day. If you find yourself like a cable box from like the last 10 years in a thrift store, and it's on, and you can buy it for like $5 or something, there's a decent chance there's a 1 terabyte hard drive in there. And that made me so much more excited to look through electronics at the thrift stores. Just a cool little tip. You can strip it for copper too. True. Really? Really? A lot of those cable boxes have like DVR functionality, and they would save like shows and stuff to a 1 terabyte hard drive. Do they think AI is the new industrial revolution? I mean, yes. Yes. Do-it-yourself NAS coming soon. Hell yeah, Nightlight plushie. Look, all I'm saying, guys, just pro tip, okay? Let's make better use of the materials we got. Sounds like the hard drive is worth more than the box itself. It absolutely is. But that's why a lot of thrift stores sell them for like $5. People just don't know. God, it was so sad. Because I do sometimes read the comments on my own channel. There were some sad motherfuckers like defending, like, oh man, but when these with these animation bottles can do it better than a Studio Ghibli movie, you better watch out. It's just like, you have no idea what the fuck you're even talking about. If you got the kind of future you wanted out of these AI models, it would be completely and utterly unfulfilling for you. Like, what a sad, miserable life to watch art just randomly thrown together by a machine. Like it's a goddamn Google search. Even less useful than a Google search, really. I don't know. Like, why would you want to watch that movie? I watched Lord of the Rings the other night because I've now been on HRT for 7 years. Go me. This is technically my first birthday stream.
The only AI I want in the future is followed by yai. Zordon, the Rangers are in trouble.
Oh man, the text-to-speech voice did that so much justice. That's so good. Thank you, Sake Tanuki, for the 5 tier 1 subs. 7 years on HRT, everybody. I'm on year number 8 now. Congrats on the 7-year anniversary. Yeah. New season of Black Mirror is out if you're a fan. I'm not a fan, but I did pledge to my partner and love guy that I would watch all of the seasons of Black Mirror and the newest one and tell her which of the episodes was like the cute one, because apparently there's always one kind of cute one. The last few months have made me question democracy as a concept. I mean, yo, Penny and T.
7 buttons for 7 years.
Thank you very, very much for these 7 tier 1 subs. Oh, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, Ti, think of it this way. The last few months shouldn't have you question democracy as a concept. It should have you question capitalism as a concept. Because what is really moving the conservative the conservative forces in our government? Is it the masses? Do tons and tons of people really, really want all these corporate tax cuts that are going to give trillions of dollars to the wealthiest people on the planet? No. Most people just want better wages, working conditions. You know, they want to grill and chill. They want to be able to like live in their apartments. You know? People didn't vote for like a 145% tariff on China. The issue is that capitalism erodes democracy. That's kind of my fundamental thesis, is that like you can have all of the controls on capitalism that you want, but if you give that capitalism enough time, it will consolidate enough power into a handful of clenched fists, and then they'll use the weight of those fists to smash a hole in democracy, you know? And because all of the motive is aligned to do that, it will find a way. And so like I truly believe that democracy is just a way we can organize ourselves as a group. You know, like I think democracy is good in a workplace. I think democracy is good in a country. And like I don't really see that there's any other way to go about it if you're going to have a country at all, you know? So capitalism is anti-democracy. Bingo bongo. You got it. "13 months HRT, disappointed at my results so far." Prosthetic PJ, word of advice, because I was also disappointed early on. You need to think of you need to think of it as going through puberty again. And what I mean by that is, did puberty like just happen overnight, or did it take years and years and years? You know, like if someone starts puberty at like 13, they're not done until they're 25. You know, like it takes a while. So like, for example, if you started 13 months ago, that'd be like you're like 14 and a half, you know? Just to put it into like a more readily accessible context, you know? To like understand where you are in your journey. You're not done cooking, exactly. 3 years on T since January. Hell yeah, cute dark arts. The worst part is these stupid right-wingers are already saying they did vote for this stupidness. That they are saying that from a point of like, so far having been isolated from the worst effects of all of the stupidity that's happened over the past week. But I assure you, by the time these price hikes hit, by the time they start, dying because they're being denied their life-saving cancer treatment that was being pioneered in the United States, I think you're going to find that they will care. Or at the very least, the people they leave behind are going to care. Right now, they're coping or living in complete and utter denial.
Happy 7th BRT Day. One request. Could you stop soon? These are getting exponentially more expensive.
Damn,
DWA.
Paladin, thank you for the $77 dono. Really, really, really appreciate it. And I can't promise that I'll stop anytime soon. My goal is to go until I'm elderly at the very least. Are they in the 5 steps of depression? Well, no, because that's the 5 stages of grief or depression or whatever you want to call it. That's mostly just narrativizing. People do not actually go through. The steps vary. Different. Everyone has a different process. It's much more loosier and goosier, but like, it's kind of like Carl Jung in that way, Jungian psychoanalysis. Like it makes for a good story or like a story structure. Famously, for example, the game Rime uses that. And I think Rime is a beautiful game, but like, yeah. The steps aren't linear, yes. Princess Fiona, thank you for the gifted sub over on Twitch. I appreciate it. I haven't started HRT because I'm scared of it being taken away by Trump. Well, think of it this way. If he does try and take it away, that's going to be insanely hard to do. It's going to be really hard, largely because estrogen and testosterone are literally some of the most commonly prescribed, medications in the United States. Literally, like testosterone blockers, one of the most widely prescribed medicines in the United States. I don't think that there's any danger right now of it being banned. But it is scary, and I understand that for sure. And also, because so many cis people use them, it will be easy to find, even if it does get banned, it will be easy to find folks who are willing to be a liaison. Don't mean to disrupt or be offensive. Not offensive. Always happy to answer questions about my journey. What point in your life did you feel like you wanted to transition? Pretty early on in my life. Yeah, I remember being like 5 and being like, oh yeah, I want to be a girl. And I remember being like in middle school and like daydreaming about being a girl. And like, obviously at that time I was just kind of like, well, it sucks because there's no way to do that. And I was so horribly sad about it all the time. To the point where like I would daydream about like stepping into traffic. And there'd be like a mix up, like I'd get hit by a car, but there'd be a mix up in like reconstructive surgery, and I'd just wake up having like been reconstructed as a girl, and then I would just be like, oh, too bad. Guess this is just how I am now. And like that was a common recurring daydream I had. And I didn't really realize until I was an adult how deeply fucked up that was. Like how deep that pain was, And I just kind of like when I got a bit older and I was in high school, Like, I started buying like women's shoes, and I could not for the life of me explain it to myself. I was just like, this feels nice because it was made for a girl. And I never allowed myself to take that slightly extra step. Not like, this is nice because it was made for a girl, and then the extra step because I'm a girl. I never made that extra step, because instead I was just like, this is a really weird thing that I'm into, so I'm just going to not really question it. And I went through stages of being deeply and utterly disgusted with myself. And I think a lot of like trans girls do this. Like, they build up like a collection of like gender affirming stuff, and then they feel like, oh well, this could never be me, and so or oh man, someone could find out about this, so I'm gonna throw it all away. And so I went through a couple cycles of that. And but I really tried to lean into being like mask presenting. And so this was like like having like the women's shoes thing was just like, I don't like, what is this? Like, I've got a big bushy beard. I've got big muscles. Like, some of my friends call me the mini Hulk because I can lift so much weight. Like, what am I doing? But ultimately I was just like, I'm not going to question what I'm doing. I'm just going to be a good boy. I'm going to be the best boy. And it wasn't until I was 25 that I hit a point in my life where I was just like, I just been dumped. And I was just like, I should figure out what the hell is happening in my closet. Like, why do I have this here? I might not have been aware of like a lot of my complicated gender feelings because I was just kind of bottling them all up. But I was aware that like I was bottling something up, And so I figured I'm gonna take a look at this. And so I started looking at it, and I started like growing out my hair and shaving my face, and was just like, oh well, maybe I'm gender queer, maybe I'm like non-binary. And like, I tried out a couple different labels, and then I was like, well, maybe I'm like a trans girl, but like I don't feel girly enough to call myself a trans girl. So I'm just gonna like sit with that for a bit. And then I also like posted a lot of nudes on Tumblr to just kind of like express myself, express my body, figure out kind of like, is this a fetish thing that I'm into like women's clothes? Is this like a femboy thing? Like, what is this? And ultimately I was like, okay, it's not a fetish thing. And I'm not a femboy. And I don't think I'm non-binary. And I don't think I'm genderqueer. I guess I'm a trans girl? And then that kind of was like, oh fuck, I'm a trans girl. Like it was like a lot of like playing around, and then I finally hit that realization. I was like, oh, is me being a trans girl something I can just like not tell anyone? Like, can I just be a trans girl and like not be on HRT and not visually present to anyone? And like, maybe I can just be a trans girl and live in the closet until I'm like 80 years old and everyone I know and could possibly disappoint is dead. Like, can I just do that? And it turned out ultimately the answer to that was no. A friend of mine, God, this would have been 2018, I think. No, 2017? Shit. A close friend of mine, who I'd play video games with pretty frequently, he wound up taking his life. And that hit me really hard. Yeah, he said goodbye to me in his suicide note, if I remember. And so I started going to therapy for that. And I wanted to make sure that that therapist was also like someone who saw like LGBTQ patients. Because part of what like obviously it hit me hard for a whole slew of reasons, but another part of what hit me hard about it was that I saw a lot of similarities between my story and his story, and like that made me realize that like if I didn't transition, like I couldn't just like keep that to myself. And my friend wasn't trans, but like there were similarities, and I don't want to get too much into that, but like it just made me realize like I could go the same way. This wasn't like someone told me that trans people are more prone to suicide. Like no one told me that. I did eventually find that out, obviously, but like no one told me that. I just intuited it about myself and how sad I was, not being able to be me. And so I started HRT and several months after beginning therapy, and it's been pretty good, but also like it's fucking hard. The hardest moment for me has always been like kind of the realization that like, well, cis men do not sit and agonize over not being girls. Cis men don't do that. Cis men don't feel sad about being boys every day. Cis men aren't like imagining themselves being hit by a bus when they're in middle school, hoping to be reconstructed into like ladies. When cis men talk about how cool it would be to be a woman, like they're talking about how cool it would be to touch titties and like to play with themselves for like, a day, not be a woman, And then shortly after that, the realization that like, oh, okay, either I transition and that means telling everyone I know, even if I risk never being able to see them or talk to them again, telling everyone I know that this is who I am now. And that's really fucking scary. And I understand how some people never make it over that hump because it is easily one of the hardest decisions. Like it was one of the hardest decisions of my life to not kill myself and to be me, And that I mean I'm glad I'm still here. but like it was genuinely one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. This is the biggest thing for me. I don't talk about how I feel, but I always feel bad about not being a femme when I look in the mirror. Guess I'm still grappling with that. And that's the thing. It's gender is such an interesting journey because it's different for everybody, you know? Your video covering the anti-trans PragerU documentary mentioning every trans person wishes they came out sooner and didn't repress things so much is something I think about that helped guide my coming out and helping other trans people and questioning people I know IRL. Well, that's a big honor to me, Gamer G. I'm really, really glad. Because, yeah, if I can do anything that makes, like, other people's gender journey easier.
One of the reasons I want to be more politically and socially active is to be there for younger trans folks. I want to help them avoid my mistakes.
Absolutely. And Dragonfly, thank you for the tier 4 sub. Thank you so goddamn much. But it's also like, you know, it's weird when it comes to younger trans folks because like part of it is like I want to make sure younger trans people are safe and happy in a way that I wasn't allowed to be. And like I there's like a little bit of a conflict in my heart because I really want that. And there's also like this bit of jealousy, you know? It's like a little shard of pain in my heart. Like I wish I could be you, you know? I wish I could have been you. But like I feel like every trans person is like, I wish I could have transitioned earlier. And it's such a real feeling, you know? Such a real feeling of like having missed time. And I think the way to like deal with that is just to recognize everyone has that feeling to some degree about something. I feel that jealousy deeply. Yeah. But like I would never sacrifice like a younger trans person's happiness to just be like spitefully jealous about it, you know? Like, but I acknowledge that it's there. Seriously, thank you. That's wonderful. I'm sorry you had those periods of despair. Very happy you're here to help others. Yeah, and it's, you know, I still struggle with a lot of stuff. You know, it gets easier, but like it's always a struggle, but it gets easier. I think a little bit every day. You know, it's kind of like going to the gym, or you know, it's a struggle, but it gets easier every time you go. Exactly, Fenry. It's healthy to acknowledge, just don't let it consume you. You get it. What's your advice for someone who is trans and married to someone who supports the transition but thinks makeup and changing her body is wrong and isn't attracted to trans people, asking for a friend? Well, that's always a really difficult situation. I think one of the hardest parts about transitioning is the social relationships that may need to change in order to be, you know, in order to be yourself. And I mean, like, I don't really understand someone who is supportive of the transition, is supportive of someone transitioning, but isn't supportive of like makeup or body changes. Like that doesn't square up for me. I had extremely anti-LGBTQ parents who I was afraid of and who punished me for anything that was not gender conforming. Remember talking to my mom about how intersex people chose their gender. She said that the doctors and the parents decide and do the surgery after birth. I was like 9 years old at this point. Felt like I was given the wrong gender and I wanted to ask if I was intersex. I bottled up for the next 24 years until I finally realized when a streamer came out. Well, I'm glad you got there, Alexia Rose. But yeah, similarly to me, like my dad was not a fan of the gays, to say the least. you know, without knowing more about the situation, prosthetic PJ, like I guess my general take would be that that person doesn't seem genuinely supportive. That seems like someone who's saying they're supportive to not come across as an asshole, but it then is stymieing any effort to actually see the transition through. You know? Yeah, it's kind of like saying I support your transition, just not the transition part. Yeah. I have to say, as a mama, I'm so proud of all of you. I'm glad you are here and you make my life brighter, just like my own daughters do. Thank you for staying. Thanks for the support, Amber Brains. I appreciate it. Yeah, again, like just like a month and a half ago, my dad called me and accused me of being in a cult for being trans. So that, you know, it's those relationships are hard, you know. Yeah, he called me to tell me how worried he was about me being on hormones, and I didn't really have the heart to tell him that I've been on hormones for 7 goddamn years, that I'm doing better than I ever have before. I'm happier than I ever have been before. And like, yeah, there have been physical side effects, Dad. I grew breasts and hips and a goddamn ass. And I got hot. Kind of. Relatively. I had an argument with my mom about trans people, and she said, can I say that quote? Can I say that quote in like why can't they just be gay? Why do they have to change their bodies? It's just like, well, it's my fucking body, you know? Like, you don't own my body. I'm the one who owns my body. Thanks, Princess Fiona. I wasn't fishing for that, but I'll take it. Is the intersex experience similar to the trans experience? I think that there are enough analogous things. Like, trans is a big umbrella. Transgender is just someone who identifies with a gender other than what they were assigned at birth. I imagine a lot of intersex people fall into that category, though not all. But I imagine there's a lot of similarities. Also, many of us are gay. Some of us are bisexual. Is this I think this is what I was looking for.
We bring in the studio this morning one of the gay rights activists, Mr. Should I call you Mr? Sure. Pepe Julian Onziema. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Good morning.
Me. Morning to you.
Why are you gay?
Who says that?
I just needed that. I just needed that. Genuinely, that is like the state of a lot of discourse. And I do think that there is a not insignificant amount of Republican politics boils down to just really wanting to get back to this level of discourse as it relates to LGBTQ people. Just
I'm gay.
You are gay. You are a transgender.
What shows that I'm gay?
You are a transgender, yes, and you're a gay rights activist and an outspoken lesbian, homosexual. How can I describe you? Now, we're looking at the raging debate. You're a gay rights activist. Why should someone be gay? You're having a girlfriend.
Yes.
Do you perform the natural obligations?
I'm not sexually active right now.
So what
When
are
are
you
we
doing
going
with
to
this
talk
lady?
about the indoctrination of Thomas the Tank Engine and the normalization of trans men?
I don't know how to respond to that, Sake Tanuki. Oh wait, you've never seen the full clip? This isn't even the full clip. This is just clips from the interview. This is an actual straight man interview of like the first gay person he's ever seen, I
My
think.
boyfriend and I went out to wrestling tonight. We had a great time, but I bet I've lost my voice. Hope people are having a good night.
SSV Cloud, that sounds like a delightful evening. I hope I'm glad you had fun.
Choice.
I've just not, I've chosen not to engage.
Doesn't that make you gay?
What do you mean, doesn't that make me gay? I am male and attracted to a female.
So who is gay?
I'm gay.
Oh god. Oh no, Brassman, when I say that Republicans unironically want to take us back to like this level of discourse about LGBTQ people, I'm not kidding. Hello, High Progressive. Yeah, the full interview is a much longer affair. Good morning. Why are you gay? Oh my god, is the full thing is an hour? It's an hour-long conversation? I'm real sorry here. We're gonna have to play this part because I need to know what's happening.
So what do they do?
I need to know what. Look at this. Look at this. I've never seen the full thing.
These are some of the things they use. I want to give you evidence. You see,
Pastor, aren't you being too harsh to these
no,
people?
no,
Why for once can't you relax and then think about the pain they go through as society ostracizes them?
Kansoke nkubulire lwaki adduse. Njagala olabe ebintu bino, obiraba bino. Ebintu bino ze karoti ze bakozesa. Okiwulira? Bakozesa karoti zino ne beefu oyo omuwala gw'olabye alowooza nti musajja. She thinks she's a man. But she does not have the equipment to be a man. So what do? To be able to try and penetrate the other person, they use carrots because it's a carrot.
Is that corn? It's fucking bananas and carrots and shit. He just brought a bunch of produce. He went to Trader Joe's before the interview. God. All right, that's all we need to see. We don't need to watch this entire thing, but holy shit, it's so good. I think it's a plantain. It could be a plantain. Is this a trans man or a butch they're talking about? I think a trans man. I believe so. I just can't get over this guy handling what he is trying to tell everyone is a bunch of dicks. Well, this guy looks at all of them thinking, that's a lot of dicks. Like just this somehow the why are you gay interviewer and this guy are the gayest part of this interview. Also, the hyperfixation on sex is only being PIV. Well, yeah, but that's like a lot of straight people do that. They're like, wait, what do you mean fingers can be involved? What do you mean a mouth can be involved? Butts? In this economy? Why, I never. He's really eyeing him down? Yeah. Where was this? I think this was on like Nigerian television. Yeah, what the fuck is foreplay moment? Exactly. I thought they said Uganda. Sure, Uganda. Oh, it's a super old clip. When was this from? This was uploaded 6 years ago, and I think that's even at the time this was considered like an old clip. Amazing stuff. A carrot? If 4play is so good, why haven't they made 5play? Y'all need to get on my level. Anyway, I thought that was fun. You know what? I'm gonna play some first Berserker Kazan while we go over Erica Chenoweth's Why Civil Resistance Works, Nonviolence in the Past and Future. She has an 1.5 hour long lecture from Dartmouth, and we'll go over that together, huh? Yeah, I'll get the tab for you. I just closed it. I'll resurrect it from the dead. Here we go. Link. Okay, strap-ons are hot though, SSV Cloud. Let's just be clear. They're hot. Let's see. Let's do the thing. Do. Thank you for watching the show. Did you just say Dartmouth? Yeah. Speaking of strap-ons, I saw the most hilarious strap-on video today. From the strap-on influencers. The strap-on mafia. A seasonal Shape Hero Factory update. Huzzah. I've seen a chick strap on another chick. It wasn't really that hot to me. I mean, you know, to each their own. Oh, I know you're not. I'm just very strap-on positive. Is that a game about Ben Shape Hero? No. Take that back. Dartmouth?
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Timothy Ruback. I teach here at the Nelson A. Rockefeller Center at Dartmouth College. We're all very glad that you could join us today. I'd like to take a moment before we begin to ask everyone to turn their cell phones off, if you haven't done so already.
Yeah, jerks.
And having done that, It's my pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon's public lecture, Why Civil Resistance Works, Nonviolence in the Past and Future by Erica Chenoweth. Erica is...
Wait, so what is this? This is a lecture about why... You know how the other day I was talking about how parties and like... You know, you want protests to be kind of like a street festival where like people can bring their families and like the elderly can go, stuff like that. This is related to that. This is like the research that backs up what I was saying the other day.
Is currently a professor in the government department at Wesleyan College. She's been a scholar at Berkeley's Institute for International Studies, Stanford's Center for International Security and Cooperation, and Harvard's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. Her work on civil resistance reminds us that organized nonviolence can be an especially effective strategy in achieving political goals. This is true even when faced with serious repression. This work on nonviolence as a strategy is garnering attention and international acclaim, and not just from academics. Her most recent co-authored book, Why Civil Resistance Works, The Strategic Logic of Nonviolent Conflict, has been recognized as a 2011 Book of the Year by The Guardian. It has been nominated for the 2012 Lionel Gelber Prize, which is a literary award for the best nonfiction book in English on foreign affairs that can deepen public debate on significant international issues, and proving that academics are in on the act.
From Genderqueer.
I'm not built to suck your dick.
I need that quote and the I need both. I need Kennedy saying that. And I need I need the Alex Jones. They complement each other, you see.
Act as well. It has been nominated for the American Political Science Awards Association's.
Sorry, I just realized that I'm logging in to get my ass kicked by this guy a billion times. So get ready for me to grind.
Robert Jervis and Paul Schroeder Award for the best book in international history and politics. This is nothing new. Her last book, a volume on states and non-state actors in international conflict, was also nominated for the Jervis and Schroeder Award just 1 year previously. Her work on nonviolence serves as an effective counterpoint to her research on global terrorism. At Wesleyan, Erica also directs the program on terrorism and insurgency research. She has published extensively on motivations for terrorism, on what might make an individual or group choose terrorism rather than civil resistance or some other tactic in order to achieve political ends. She's also written extensively on the relationship between terrorism and democracy. She also soon will be publishing a textbook on understanding terrorism, one that I think will offer a historical and analytic approach from a multiple set of theoretical perspectives in a way that no other textbook successfully does so far. Today, I think to speak about nonviolence when one is spending so much energy on the problem of terrorism is to really effectively, I think, stave off despair. It's to remember that political strategies can change, and it's to realize that strategies other than violence are capable of carrying the day.
Yeah.
In addition to this lecture on nonviolence, Erica Chenoweth has visited students in a government class taught by Professor Coggins. She has met with many faculty from the Dickey Center's International Relations and Foreign Policy Working Group, and she will be meeting with members of many student organizations, including Rockefeller Center co-curricular groups, later this evening. We're also happy that Erica has been able to share her time, her enthusiasm, and her ideas with us today. Today she'll be speaking about the potential of nonviolence as a strategy to achieve political goals. She will be sharing observations on how nonviolence can be an effective strategy, even in difficult times. She will reflect upon past examples and offer considerations on the future. She will speak for about an hour, and then we will open the floor up for questions. So please, I would like now for you to all join me in welcoming Erica Chenoweth.
Thank you so much for that generous and warm introduction, and thanks to all of you for coming out on Friday afternoon in the middle of winter. I know that for many of you, you'd probably rather be hunkered down and warmed up by now. I just wanted to start off by saying that Joanne, who I want to thank for her orchestrating of this whole thing, gave me a cup of tea before the talk started. And she randomly pulled I guess this is lemon ginger tea bag that has a saying on it that essentially sums up my whole presentation, and then I'll sit down and we can have Q&A, which is your choices will change the world. So that's much more for you guys than for me, I think, as sort of the thrust of the talk I'm going to talk about today. I just want to say, too, how honored I am that people saw fit to choose me as a speaker as part of this Martin Luther King month celebration, I guess it's happening here at Dartmouth. And I think it's very cool to have my work associated with the work of Dr. King and so many other people that put their lives on the line for many of us to feel freer. So let me just get started with the research here that I'm going to talk about today. Before I tell you the findings, I want to tell you the motivation for the study in the first place. I am, as Timothy mentioned, kind of a convert in some ways. I started out my career thinking I was just going to be a terrorism expert or like a guns and bombs mainstream security studies scholar. Somebody that studies violence, things that explode, bullets flying through the air. That's sort of my bag. And what happened is that the last year of my graduate training at the University of Colorado, I got an email invitation to apply for a workshop that was called People, Power, and Pedagogy. And this was being hosted by the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict at Colorado College. So my colleague sent me this email and said, here's the other side of the coin, might be interesting. That's all he said. And the part of it that interested me the most was the part where I scrolled down and it said free, and that you get a box of books and a nice vacation in southern Colorado. And so I applied and got in. And then they sent me the box of books, and it was full of material by people like Gene Sharp and Kurt Schock and Peter Ackerman and Jack Duvall. A couple DVDs, one called A Force More Powerful, which is a very effective documentary series about the power of nonviolence. And I'm reading this stuff, and I was kind of shocked because the thrust of many of the arguments that was in common across these readings was that nonviolent resistance, civil resistance, can be an effective force for change in the world, even more effective than violent resistance in many contexts. Now, I must say that this was a completely new argument to me. Coming from my background, when I saw the word nonviolent or nonviolence, I immediately conflated it with pacifism. So anytime somebody used the word nonviolent or nonviolence, I would put them in a category of people that I thought were committed to the use or deployment of nonviolence for moral or principled reasons. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't a topic of interest for me. And so this set of arguments was saying that there are pragmatic reasons, leaving aside the moral or principled reasons for using nonviolent resistance, to where it's a more strategically effective choice in achieving political aims. And so it was appealing more to the part of me that resonated with rational choice models and things like that were very familiar in my field. But here's the weird thing. There was no cross-referencing at all. None of the stuff that I had ever studied on violent conflict ever referenced this stuff on nonviolent resistance, and none of the stuff on nonviolent resistance was referencing any of the stuff on violence. Yet they were talking about many of the same dynamics. So needless to say, this piqued my curiosity. I go to this conference, and I sit in the back of the room and become very quickly the least popular person at the conference, right? Because I kept challenging. They were bringing up very compelling cases. They're in Serbia, the Serbs brought down Milosevic, the butcher of the Balkans, using nonviolent, strategic nonviolent action. And I said, okay, well, is this unique or is it a pattern? We don't know. And so sort of toward the end of the week, I talked to a lot of different people, and basically they asked me to think about if you wanted to do a research design where you would actually study whether nonviolent resistance is more effective than violent resistance, how would you do it? And so I kind of set it up in the most skeptical way possible, and I'll tell you how I did that. And that sort of is what leads to where we are today. So let me tell you why I had some reservations about the effectiveness of nonviolent resistance. So nonviolent resistance, as I'm talking about it, I'll use the terms nonviolent resistance and civil resistance interchangeably. So this is a very particular category of phenomenon. What I'm talking about when I say nonviolent or civil resistance is a form of active conflict where unarmed civilians use a variety of nonviolent tactics like strikes, boycotts, protests, stayaways, demonstrations, and other things to try to affect political change without using violence or threatening to use physical violence against the opponent. A nonviolent resistance campaign is a series of these tactics that are linked together and coordinated, usually by an organized group, to some particular end. So, the Serbs in the Otpor movement were prosecuting a nonviolent direct action campaign, a civil resistance campaign. They weren't just having a one-off protest every once in a while saying bring down Milosevic. They had a series of linked and sequenced tactics that were more like a war with a variety of battles along the way. So this is the phenomenon that I was most interested in. And the reason that I thought that it was probably not going to be very effective was because of the intellectual environment of the time. So here were the works that were really dominating the mid-2000s when I first became interested in this topic. The first set of arguments was basically saying that violent insurgency is a very effective asymmetric strategy. As long as you adopt an indirect approach, you don't confront a regime directly out in the open battlefield, and you do guerrilla tactics and that sort of thing, it can be pretty effective, or at least extremely antagonistic to major powers. And some people were even taking a further leap and saying, actually, the more violent and nasty you can be, the better. Robert Pape wrote an article, a very provocative one, called The Strategic Logic of Suicide Terrorism. And then he wrote a book called Dying to Kill. Great title, right? And the idea was Dying to Win. Neo Bloom's book is called Dying to Kill. Bob Pape's book is called Dying to Win. The thesis behind his book is that basically suicide terrorism is very effective. So the bloodier and more brutal you can be, especially if it's against a democratic opponent who's occupying who's a military occupation, the easier it's going to be to coerce them. So this was the argument. Violence works, and it works better as it gets more violent, right? So Max Abrams, who happened to be a Dickey Center Fellow, I think, in the last few years, wrote a pretty good article called Why Terrorism Does Not Work in 2006. And he was directly taking on this notion that, especially Pape's argument about suicide terrorism. And what he was saying is that basically terrorism is a really horrible communication strategy because people get really distracted by the fact that things are exploding. They forget what you're saying you want, and they're diverted by the explosion. So it's really hard to stay on message and to make sure that the message doesn't get distorted. So he wrote that article. But on the last page, he says, if that's true, if terrorism doesn't work, why does it happen so often? And he says, probably because it's still more effective than nonviolence. So even if it doesn't work, in his case he says it only works 7% of the time, he's saying that probably nonviolent resistance works even less often than that, right? So that's the sort of mainstream view at that point. And then there are some other kind of reasons I had some major resistance to the notion that nonviolent resistance could work. And it emerges from just the idea that there might be certain contexts where it's impossible, or that violence is truly necessary to achieve major goals. And these major goals would be things like regime change, throwing out a foreign occupying army, or seceding territory. I mean, these are tough things to achieve. We're not talking about you want a wage increase or something like that here. We're talking about the complete reordering of a system. So these lead to basically a few empirical questions that emerged out of the process of seeing this literature, and then seeing all of these weird cases from the nonviolent resistance stuff that seem to deviate from our expectations. So these are the questions that I'm going to try to provide a nominal answer to today. The first one is, which of them actually does have a more effective track record when you line them up side by side? Nonviolent resistance or violent insurgency? The second question, of course, is we know that nonviolent resistance doesn't always succeed. So when does it fail and why? And the third question is, if we line them up side by side, which of these methods of conflict end up producing societies that we'd all kind of want to live in? And are there real consequences? I mean, when violent insurgency works, is it worth it in the long run? What do we gain from using this as a method of conflict if it's unnecessary? So let me first tell you about the way I set up this study, because it's a little important, just so that everybody's on the same page about the limits of the research itself. So what I did what I told you about the napkin that I wrote the research design down on, right? So basically the napkin turned into a whole long research proposal, which you'd hope it would. And it wasn't just a haphazard thing. But what I decided to do is start with a widely accepted data set on internal armed conflict called the Correlates of War data, and it's the intrastate violence data. And what this is looking at are cases of armed conflict where organized states are being challenged by an internal actor using armed conflict. And there were at least 1,000 battle deaths that have been sustained, and there have been at least 100 deaths on either side, violent deaths on either side from combat. And so what that means is we're looking at civil wars, basically. And then there's also another data set called the extrastate wars, and this is dealing with things like military occupations. So what I did was I just set aside all of the correlates of war data, at least 1,000 battle deaths, and I set aside the ones that had those maximal goals I'm talking about: regime change, anti-occupation, and secession. And the reason I did that is because, as I told you, I was a skeptic. I wanted to pick the hardest cases I could find for where nonviolent resistance could work to compare against. So after I looked at the correlates of war data and set aside those cases, then I went and looked for the correlates of nonviolent conflict data set. Believe it or not, there was no such thing. And so I had to build it from scratch, and it took 2 years to do that. And what I was trying to do is find the types of nonviolent civil resistance campaigns that would be as closely analogous to those civil conflicts from the correlates of war data. So anything that didn't reach a minimum participation of 1,000 active observed participants is out.
Okay.
So I only included nonviolent campaigns where there were at least 1,000 people actively participating. So that automatically excludes a huge set of cases. Then what I wanted to look at is whether they were looking explicitly for a change in regime, to overthrow the incumbent government, to expel a foreign occupying army, or to secede territory. So I took those hardest demands. So if they're looking at gender rights, wage rights, labor rights, things like that, they're out. Only these 3 core demands. And then I looked at whether they had a series of observed tactics that are linked and coordinated. So a one-off protest where there are 400,000 people doesn't count. There actually have to be multiple observed tactics in order over in a relatively short period of time. And I can talk a little bit more about the coding rules if you'd like to in the Q&A. Another thing that I want to mention is that the primary method of conflict is nonviolent. So there might be some cases occasionally where you see a set of demonstrations, strikes, boycotts, and things like that that go on for 6 months with thousands of people participating, and then there's a group that blows a few things up. If it doesn't become the primary mode of conflict prosecution, I still count that as a nonviolent campaign. But I will designate in the data set that it developed an armed wing. Okay? So we have ideal types of violent campaigns and nonviolent campaigns. Ideal types are always hairy, but the good news is that we actually do observe a number of ideal types. We observe a number of campaigns where they're primarily focusing on violence as their strategy, and a number of campaigns where they're almost exclusively, and in some cases absolutely exclusively, relying on nonviolence. So once I kind of went through that whole process, I then did a validation strategy where I circulated the 320-some cases among dozens of experts in the field. And I asked them to evaluate the effectiveness of these campaigns in their view. And what I asked them to look for is, did it achieve what it said it wanted? Did it get rid of the incumbent regime, secede territory, or drive out a foreign occupying army? And so I got a bunch of responses back, and then I made some judgments about whether these campaigns succeeded or failed. And I applied very high criteria to the ability of them to succeed. So strict coding all around. And then I ran the numbers. And what I found was totally shocking because it was contrary to my expectations and that of the literature, that nonviolent campaigns actually are more than twice as successful from 1900 to 2006 as violent insurgencies. They're also more than twice as likely to achieve partial success, which is, in my view, significant concessions. For instance, they forced a dictator to hold real, true competitive elections and then elected a new person, but didn't actually force him out of office. That would be a partial success category. Violent campaigns are more than twice as likely to fail. Another thing that really struck me is that actually these trends are overwhelmingly increasing over time. So violent insurgency is becoming an increasingly ineffective method of conflict, whereas nonviolent resistance is becoming increasingly effective over time. So the question is, why is that the case? And in order to answer that, I had to drill down into these cases and find out more attributes of them to see if there are things systematically distinguishing nonviolent campaigns from violent ones. The argument, after looking at a lot of these cases, is that nonviolent campaigns are generally far better at attracting diverse and large participation that's sustainable over time relative to armed campaigns. And that the source of success for most non-state actors is people power, basically. And nonviolent campaigns are much better at generating and sustaining people power and of accessing points of leverage within the society based on the composition of their membership. So the strategy of civil resistance, so the strategy of insurgency is that basically you get as many people as you can with as many guns as you can, and you take on the state opponent. And you don't always take it on directly by going to the battlefield or something. Sometimes you do sabotage, you do assassinations, you try to build a network of sympathizers and supporters, but you're fighting the regime, and your object is to take them down from the center and to really, over time, corrode their capacity to maintain power. This is a very difficult way to win in most states which boast the monopoly on the use of force. The strategy of nonviolent resistance is not to actually confront that state at the top, the regime elites at the top. It's instead to try to leverage people power to pull the pillars that support that regime elite at the top away from it. In other words, every regime has people it needs to rely on to maintain power, whether they're economic elites, business elites, security forces, police, civilian bureaucrats, state media. It needs their active obedience and cooperation to maintain the ordinary running of things. And the power of civil resistance inheres from its ability to start disrupting the ability and willingness of those pillars of support to maintain obedience. So let me get more into why. So this actually is just showing that participation matters. Participation matters a lot. This is actually a very difficult chart to interpret because the bottom axis is a logarithmic value. But the way we can interpret this is basically saying if you're between this bottom third here, your probability of success is between 10 and about 30%, which is where most violent insurgencies fall, in that range. And that's just a few thousand members. And it's maybe like less than 1% of the population most of the time. So then if you get up to a percent of the population where you're somewhere between 2.5% and 5%, your campaign is much more in the 50-50 range. 2.5% to 5% you have pretty good odds, actually, of winning. It's half and half. The regime's going to win or you're going to win, but you have a fighting chance.
Like,
Once
this is
you get up
good,
above
actionable
the 5%,
information.
Of the population mobilized in a civil resistance campaign, it becomes very, very difficult for regimes to hold on because their pillars of support start to crack apart. And in fact, if you're up in the range of about 7.5 to 10% of your population, most regimes cannot survive this level of challenge. They simply, the pillars of support don't stay there for them to continue holding on. So this argument is really premised on the notion that people will be more willing to participate in nonviolent campaigns.
It's true.
And so the question is, why would that be? Well, Maria and I thought a lot about this, and we came up with this theory.
You aren't being asked to give your life. That's
that basically there are higher barriers to participation in a violent insurgency, and we sort of break them apart into 4 different types of barriers: physical barriers, commitment barriers, informational barriers, and cognitive barriers. So let me first get to the physical ones. So does everybody know what ROTC is? ROTC, yeah, everybody knows ROTC. Is there ROTC at Dartmouth? Yeah. So I was in ROTC in college, and I can tell you this is a structured military thing. So we're supposed to get up every morning at like 4 o'clock and go to physical training and stuff. And I can tell you that in preparation for any type of armed conflict, whether it's organized or disorganized or whatever, nobody likes getting up. I didn't like getting up at 4 in the morning and running until I vomited. That's just me. But actually, so I quit and did something else. It's really, most people don't like the physical challenges of armed conflict. And it's actually really difficult to get. Some people like it. For some people, they like the discipline, they like the routine, they like the exercise, whatever. But most elderly folks, women, and kids aren't going to do that as something they want to do on a daily basis. They're certainly not going to engage in any disciplined way. They don't want to camp in a cave or in the jungle for an undisclosed number of months. It is hard living. It is hard living to be part of an underground organization, whether you're in an advanced democracy or you're in a very undeveloped place. And so there are physical challenges to participation. There are even physical challenges to participating in just the training exercises themselves. I mean, so many people engaged in armed groups die when they're just handling weapons by accident. The second type of barrier to participation is a commitment barrier. And this one relates to the fact that most rebel groups have a high barrier to entry in terms of your level of commitment. If you're going to join the group, you're going to demonstrate your commitment to the group because the risks are so high for the group to disclose their being that, a lot of times in many countries, people are forced to kill somebody as a demonstration of the fact that they're not informants. So there's not really, to establish the level of trust necessary to sustain an armed organization, people are often required to do things that ordinary folks are going to think really long and hard before doing. And so with a nonviolent campaign, people can participate when they feel like it, when it counts. But then they can go home back to their day job or their family. They don't have to leave, they don't have to go underground. There are, you can participate in an ad hoc manner. It's not going to actually disrupt your daily life that much until sort of the chips are down and it's time to show up for 2 weeks.
Go make yourself like
but
a
otherwise,
pie. Go make some cookies.
Things go on as ordinary. There are also lower informational barriers. Now, a lot of armed groups have a major communication problem. I talked about Max Abrams saying that terrorism has a communication problem as a tactic, but in general, any type of armed activity does. Because when you're underground, that means you're not available to be out in the public as a publicity person, explaining to everybody why you're doing what you're doing, how many you are, and what the viability of your campaign is. So the way that many armed groups demonstrate their credibility and their commitment is just by doing armed acts. But it's very difficult to infer from armed acts how many there actually are in support of it. So there's an information problem. With civil resistance, on the other hand, let's say you live in a very oppressive regime, and you're in your apartment at 7 o'clock, and you hear a knock at the door. It's your next door neighbor. You open the door, and they say, "We're having a demonstration tonight at 8:30. We anticipate that the police are going to be there. Here's a little flyer that gives you an escape route. We understand if you're not there." Now, if somebody came and talked to me like that, I wouldn't be going at 8:25 to show up and,
Yeah, it
and
doesn't
be the
seem
first
very
person
smart.
in the public square. You know, I would look out my window and see, are there power in numbers or not? And if they're not power in numbers, I'm going to stay at home, and I'm going to live to see another day, right? But on that day when I look out and I see there are 6,000 people and there are people marching down the street, I feel safer. So I'll go ahead and go out and join into that. That solves my information problem. Civil resistance actions tend to be highly visible. They communicate in and of themselves what the power of numbers look like. Finally, there are cognitive barriers to participation in armed conflict. And this is just based on some research that I've been looking at lately on what it actually takes to convince people to use violence in a deliberate fashion against non-combatants and others, even assassinations and things like that. And Dave Grossman wrote this great book that's called On Killing. And this book evaluates all these different psychological studies that militaries have had to do to try to ensure that their troops will actually discharge their weapons in the direction of the enemy during combat. Because there were so many alarming studies that were coming back from combat effectiveness work showing that troops don't
One of the
like
most effective
shooting at
resistance
the other
campaigns
side.
of
They would rather
history
shoot
was that
into
of
the air
Indian Bacon.
and so forth. And so
It was
a lot of
expressly
militaries
nonviolent.
undergo intense psychological training to try to remove the hesitation for killing. And in Dave Grossman's book, he says in these studies, they were trying to do psychological profiles of troops to find out who kills easiest. And they find that
I don't despise it, but there's a part of me that like your wordplay is so good it makes me mad. Just as someone who has an English degree. God damn. You operate on like another level of pun. Also, we're gonna have to get through the rest of no. Gonna have to get through the rest of this without me unpausing the video. I'm sorry. I hate you, please die. Oh, shit. Okay.
something like just a handful of percent of people do almost all the killing in combat. Half of them are like national heroes, you know, like people who are just true to the cause and they believe in it. And the other half of them are psychopaths, people who want to kill people.
Yeah.
Now, that's just the research. And so a lot of what goes into the Army studies these days is trying to understand how you can make ordinary folks do what national heroes do naturally without having to make them psychopaths, right? So guess what? If you have a civil resistance campaign, none of that is going to enter into the picture. You know, you don't have to try to deal with desensitizing people to doing horrible things to other human beings or killing them, and then making them live with that later. Okay. So I mentioned the sort of pillars of support argument where nonviolent resistance seems to be a very effective way of breaking apart these pillars of support. And if that is true, then there really needs to be empirical evidence for the fact that civil resistance campaigns are outperforming violent ones in producing these breakings within the pillars. So again, I studied one of the most difficult parts, one of the most difficult pillars to actually change loyalties within, which is the security forces. So what I looked at here is whether the security forces defected to the campaign or not. And so what you can see is that participation definitely matters. This lower axis here again is the proportion of the population that's mobilized actively in the campaign. But what you can see is that violent campaigns on average kind of circle around. The average size violent campaign doesn't really get more than a 20% chance of producing security force defections. And this is pretty natural. If you have an armed insurrection and people are shooting at you, usually most security forces don't think about it and think whether they want to join that side or stay with their side. Usually their training kicks in and they fire back, right? That's typically the case. Not always, but typically. Whereas for nonviolent campaigns, you can see that as the number of people increases, it also is associated with an increase, like a major increase in the probability of the security forces defect. Because not only are people putting pressure on the security forces to change sides, but they're demonstrating their credibility and that they're going to win eventually, and so you want to be on the winning side. So how does this work in the micro sense? How many are married or in a serious relationship? That's kind of, sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass anybody, but me too. So basically, so you know that when you go home at night, the quality of your relationship and your happiness at home matters as to your quality of life in the long term. You want to keep that person happy in general. So let's say that you're in a repressive country and you're a general, and you come back from a day of repressing a bunch of students in the streets that have been demonstrating for a long time. Now your wife, you're both in the country's central party. Your wife is like one of the educational elites. Through the sort of crony system, she's been awarded the presidency of a major university, a big state university. She's the president. And you come home from one of these days of repression, and she's giving you the freeze. And you're sort of like, what is it? You know, would you just tell me what's going on? And she's like, you know what? I saw on the media what happened out there today, and I saw some of my kids in that crowd. You know, and so, okay, all right, I get it. So this is not going to make the general change sides, right? The general's not going to then be found, and his wife's not going to be found usually the next day in that crowd demonstrating alongside the students. But day after day after day of this, and the general's wife giving him the freeze because he keeps doing the same thing over and over again, and she gets angrier and angrier, the general may one day just decide to keep things happy at home, but he's going to call in sick. Calling in sick, and calling in sick multiple times, or having multiple officers call in sick, can sometimes make or break these movements, right? This is non-cooperation. It's non-obedience within the pillars of support. And this sort of action, it turns out, can be very consequential. So notice that it's not appealing to their hearts. It's not trying to make them love the movement. It's not trying to win over their sympathies or their loyalties or anything like that. It's about raising the costs for them of perpetrating the same thing every day forever, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, part of what you want to do is you want to make people aware that, like, this shit sucks, and it's going to continue to suck, and, like, if they can just kind of, you know, stay home, then maybe things will suck less. Right?
Okay. So it is true that, that many nonviolent campaigns suffer massive amounts of repression. We're seeing it all over the world all the time. And one of the big hesitancies that I've always had about the effectiveness of nonviolent resistance is that I thought they can't be effective if the regime decides it wants to repress in a major way. It just can't work. So remember when I described the data set, I mentioned that there were three maximal goals I looked at: regime change, anti-occupation, and secession. All three of these are kind of major goals. And so in almost all of the cases, 90% of the cases, all of the campaigns faced massive repression from the state because they were asking the state to reorder itself. Even so, having experienced that level of repression, the nonviolent campaigns outperformed the violent ones by over 2 to 1. So why is that? I think there are two reasons. The first is the phenomenon of backfire, which people like Brian Martin and Lee Smithy and Gene Sharp calls it political jujitsu. Others call it the boomerang effect. In other words, it's observed a lot of times all over the place. If we have that many synonyms for the same thing, that means that it's happened a lot, right? And so we see it actually happening more when a campaign stays nonviolent in the face of mass repression. Why is that? Well, one of the major kind of necessities for a campaign to experience or elicit backfire is that there has to be a sense of moral outrage at the repression. And I don't have a global study of public opinion polls or anything like that to refer to, but the cases with which I'm familiar suggest to me that people tend to be more outraged when nonviolent protesters or
Watching
demonstrators or
this lecture is
boycotters or
making me
strikers
angry at
are
Congress for having
repressed
so many under 50
than when
interns
armed
and yet being
groups are
unable to
repressed.
put the printed
in
out
general.
boards digitally
But
on
people
screen.
don't like it when armed groups are repressed and it affects a bunch of innocent civilians, which happens a lot. But that's kind of a difficult gamble for armed groups to make, is just to rely on civilian casualties to help boost your popularity, right? Another reason why nonviolent resistance might be outperforming violent resistance in this regard is because when you have mass numbers of people participating in a campaign, you have a much wider variety of tactics available to you. Instead of just attack or retreat, when you retreat, you have a method that you can rely on to continue applying pressure and disruption in the retreat. So in nonviolent resistance literature, there are two types of methods. One are methods of concentration. That's like demonstrations, protests, things where people come together in a particular space and try to disrupt the system. These are very high risk, very vulnerable to repression, and over time become extremely predictable, not very useful. But then if you have a movement that will alternate or sequence tactics to methods of dispersion or non-cooperation, this is when people withdraw their obedience through strikes, boycotts, economic or social non-cooperation, then these are really hard to repress. So this is a picture of a general strike up in Kashmir. And you can see the security forces are a little bit confounded for where they find the people they're supposed to repress. And so a case of this is the Iranian Revolution, the one from 78 to 79. Most people don't associate it with being a nonviolent revolution, but it was. And what happened there is that there were, it was called the 100 Years Revolution, the 100 Days Revolution. And for about the first 90 or so days, the tactic was, let's have a protest. We go out and protest, and then somebody gets killed. So then we have a funeral procession, which is essentially another protest. And we do that. We gather more people. It's really great. Then they repress our funeral procession. And then we keep going to the same place at the same time every day, and we get repressed and we're getting hammered. Thousands of people are killed because the tactic just repeats itself over and over again. But once the revolution was able to get the oil workers on board, the oil workers went on strike. And they stayed home. They did a stay-at-home strike. The security forces were ordered to go house to house and pull the oil workers out of their homes and march them back to work, which they did. And the oil workers got to the oil fields and they worked at half pace. And then they went home and didn't show up to work the next day. So the security forces are ordered again to go to house, pull all these people out onto the streets and march them back to work. They get to the oil fields, they work at half pace. Day 3, the same story. Security forces are starting to realize their paycheck's not going to come next month. So what do? They give up the ghost. And they just decide we're not going to do this type of
security forces
anymore.
go,
I'm not
fuck
going
this
in my
shit,
neighbor's
I'm
house
out.
anymore like this and doing this thing. I'm not joining the revolution. We're just going to step aside. And the Shah has to leave. So one thing I sometimes hear, and that's very popular among, I'll say critics of this research, is the notion that nonviolent resistance can only work when it has significant international support. So we studied whether it really matters for nonviolent or violent campaigns to get material aid from foreign states. And we found that in terms of overt military aid or for armed conflicts, we do see about 35% of them getting military support in some sense, guns or weapons or money. But less than 10% of nonviolent campaigns get any type of material support. In this case, it's money. And this is just a little cartoon of the Egyptian military accusing an April 6th person of being sponsored by Americans. So basically, the punchline here is that nonviolent campaigns almost never get international aid. I think it's because they don't hardly ever get noticed until they've actually won. And so everybody's sort of late to the party. But here's the interesting thing. Of those 10% of the cases where they actually do get support, there isn't a lot of evidence to suggest that it helped them very much. And the reason goes back again to the dynamics of civil resistance, which are based on participation. So let's say that you are participating in a nonviolent campaign. You've been doing it for 6 months. You've been risking your neck. It's getting really hairy out there. And then somebody calls you and says, I just found out that our movement leadership is accepting money from the US, like the CIA. So as somebody who's participating in this movement, you're going to think one of two things. One, I'm not going to risk my neck anymore if they're getting rich. Or two, I hate the United States. I'm not going to participate. I guess you could think of three things too. You could think, oh, awesome. I want to do this because the U.S. is supporting it. Unlikely, but possible. And so, but basically, there are two bad outcomes from the perspective of someone who wants to help these campaigns, and only one good one. So basically, what we typically see is that getting that kind of direct material aid, overt material aid, can undermine the participation advantage that the nonviolent campaigns have. For armed campaigns, it actually helps them. It's like the one thing that helps armed campaigns win. And it's because, again, they're based on their resource access. What they need is more guns and more money to maintain themselves. They can't post the numbers. They need to make up for it with better RPGs, better intelligence, and stuff like that.
Better role-playing games.
It increases their chances of success by about 15%. Now, that's not to say that the international community should just not do anything and that we should just let these movements decide themselves when they're facing brutal repression. There's human rights abuses and stuff like that. But if you want to think about what might be the most effective types of interventions, there might be some creative ones at our disposal. One is helping groups to get access to NGOs whose function is specialized in helping people learn how to do better nonviolent conflict, helping people to protect themselves from repression and to get their human rights respected in certain conflicts and this sort of thing. And some of the follow-up research I'm doing shows that there's a modest positive association between groups in the post-Cold War period having access to international NGOs who specialize in human rights or nonviolence and their probability of success. In other words, knowledge is power. Knowing how to do better nonviolent resistance might be helping these movements. Okay, so wrapping it up. There's always this question of, we know that violent insurgency works sometimes. Absolutely it does. We've got cases like the Cuban Revolution, the Algerian Civil War, the Chinese Revolution, the Russian Revolution. All of these are good examples of where violent conflict was successful. The question is, in the long term, what are the costs associated with the method, and what kind of societies emerge from places where violent insurgency has succeeded? Now, this isn't anything systematic. These are just random numbers that I've thought about lately. But if you look at the deaths associated with civil resistance campaigns, mixed campaigns, and violent campaigns, you'll see that in Tunisia, Bahrain, and Egypt, all of three I'd call pretty much through their conclusion, more or less pretty disciplined nonviolent campaigns. You see in Tunisia there were 221 dead. In Bahrain there have been 54 so far. And then in Egypt, there were 875 killed in civil resistance. So there was repression, fatal repression. But compare it to Syria, 2011, which in July developed an armed wing and then started to see massive civilian fatalities, up to 5,500
Keep in
now.
mind, this was in
Yemen,
2012. This
I
talk
haven't
was
updated
given.
this, but the last I looked, they were up to 1,900 deaths. And then if you take a look at Libya, which was an armed conflict, there was no civil resistance in Libya. There were 2 days of spontaneous protests and then armed conflict and then NATO intervention. The figures are anywhere between 20,000 and 50,000 casualties. And then in Syria in 1982, this is up to between 20,000 and 40,000 casualties in a 3-week period when Hama was under siege because they had an armed Islamist insurgency taking on Hafez al-Assad, Bashar's father, and trying to establish a different regime. This was in 3 weeks of shelling, displacing 200,000 Syrians and literally removing the town of Hama from the map at the time. So relative to the number of people who die in armed conflicts, The number of people who die in civil resistance campaigns is horrific and inexcusable because they're peaceful protesters, and it is so much less than what it could look like if both sides were using arms. The second question is, what kind of political systems emerge behind nonviolent campaigns relative to violent ones? This is looking at what the country, the bottom axis here is what the country was a year before the campaign starts. In other words, what level of democracy the country is the year before it starts. So -10 is like pretty much a monarchy, a total monarchy or a totalitarian regime, and a +10 is like an advanced democracy like the UK. So you can see that for violent campaigns on the left, that if it's a democracy at the beginning of the campaign, it's got a 50-50 chance of being a democracy at the end of it. Whereas for nonviolent campaigns, if it's a democracy at the beginning, all the way up at the right-hand side, it's almost guaranteed to be a democracy at the end. If it's in this -5 to 5 range, an anocracy where it's sort of like undergoing transition or is vacuum of power or something like that, you can see that far more countries emerge democratic 5 years after the campaign is over in that range than those that are fighting an armed insurgency. In other words, civil resistance tends to produce democracies. Violent resistance tends to produce more authoritarian regimes. This should make some sense. If you win by the sword, why would you give it up once you're in power? Win by the sword, rule by the sword. And another thing is that if you're familiar with Robert Putnam's work on Bowling Alone, that's the sort of popular version of his argument that he makes in Making Democracy Work. He's arguing that social capital, or the association of people being together and doing lots of robust activities outside of work, like belonging to a church, belonging to a political organization, doing humanitarian activities, doing other things like that, that makes democracies better because it increases civilian interest and responsiveness by politicians. Well, civil resistance, if you think about it.
I'm seeing some questions about what about the French Revolution. Well, a good example of why the French Revolution wasn't it was pretty cool in some parts, but you wind up in Napoleon. They kind of replaced the king with a dictator. It was kind of a lateral move.
It's like social capital, but on steroids. It's in many ways creating the norms and sort of reproducing these norms that Bob Putnam is talking about, but in a way where they're actually doing it before democracy or democratic institutions are even open for business in a way. So in terms of the outcomes on the likelihood of recurrence of civil war, I took a look at whether the country is likely to experience another civil war within the next 10 years after the end of a nonviolent versus a violent conflict. And what we see here is that nonviolent campaigns are 15% less likely to experience a relapse into civil war than armed conflicts. So the 3 points here are nonviolent campaigns are associated with fewer civilian casualties, more democratic systems, and more peaceful systems than armed campaigns. So there are a number of implications of this research. For scholars, I think there are a few things. The first is that it re-emphasizes the notion of consent rather than force as the source of power. Consent and obedience are just as important as the ability to shoot a bunch of people, because any dictator that actually wants to kill a bunch of people has to have agents helping him do that, and their obedience to the task is critical. And so that seems to be where this research is pointing as the source of real power. The second thing that it does is it refocuses our attention on the role that civilians can play in wars. So a lot of the Civil War literature out there and stuff in security studies, it sees civilians as victims or resources. Victims, people we want to protect, people that it isn't fair to kill during wartime, but we all do it anyway, that sort of thing. Or resources to be plundered. We can tax them, we can loot, we can quarter ourselves. They're interfering, they're caught in the crossfire, but we work around it. This research actually makes civilians the agents of conflict. It's saying, never mind that they're victims or that they're resources, they are the agents of change. They can do, they're not just helpless people caught in the crossfire. They can actually go out and make a change for themselves. And there's always this kind of enduring debate in political science about what's more important, structure or the institutions that sort of condition responses of individuals, or agency, that is, the choices people make, regardless of structures. And I think that much of what I've been talking about here emphasizes agency over structure. What this
agency
story
over
is
structure.
It's a story
Also,
about
Saki,
people
think
making
of the
choices
5 tier 1
that are
subs.
overwhelming the structures of the society that have been burdening them for so many years. So I think that that's really refocusing us and challenging us as scholars to come up with better ways to understand that. For policymakers and for the public in general, I think that it draws our attention to, you know, who we support. And in that sense, it was a typical practice of many countries up through the Cold War to get behind certain rebel organizations that they thought would help them to achieve wider aims. And I think at times there were very cynical reasons for doing this, and at other times the reasons for doing it were very sincere. You know, that there was a belief that this would help to promote democracy and better outcomes for people. But regardless of whether it was sincere or cynical, I think that it didn't really work to do that in many contexts. But here is an alternative. And so I don't know, as I said, that governments should be in the business of endorsing, supporting, or trying to foment civil resistance campaigns. But they can certainly
What's a death claw?
Provide moral support for such campaigns. They can certainly come out and say, you know, that people have the right to peacefully organize for legitimate grievances, and to let people on the ground know that they are being heard and that there's a witness to what's happening. And then finally, I want to re-emphasize the importance of civilian-led instruments rather than our typical policy tools. You know, a lot of times when I talk with policymakers about this, they want to know, can we give them money, can we give them arms, or who can I pressure in the government to change this outcome? And because this is mass-based, unarmed resistance that ordinary folks are taking upon themselves, the ordinary policy, foreign policy toolkit is not as useful. But what may be useful are things that put civilians with know-how in touch with other civilians with know-how. And so there's a book called The Diplomat's Handbook by a former ambassador named Mark Palmer that lays out case studies of different pro-democracy and human rights movements around the world that have had assistance from different members of the international community, and even doing things like convening groups of people together who really should talk, you know, opposition groups from different countries, and maybe they could help each other, but then standing back and just letting them do what they're going to do, but at least putting them in touch. So there are lots of different ways that are more creative, that are based on accessing civilian power rather than the typical instruments of regime elites. So I'm going to end there, and hopefully my voice won't give out before the end of Q&A. But if it does, that's just because your question was too smart and too hard for me to answer, I'm sure. So how about if we end there, and I'll entertain your questions.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I want to a lot of this stuff is very, very complicated, and sometimes aggregate statistics don't seem to me to get at the complexity of it in the human and the psychological sense. But I want to go back to the civil rights movement in the United States, which may not even fit your criteria because it's not in a sense, it's seeking regime change in southern municipal and state governments and so on. But in any case, you talked about sort of the level of commitment that it took to engage in violent protest and violent opposition versus the level of commitment it took to engage in nonviolent or civil, peaceful protest. And it seems to me that if you look at the reality in the South in the 1950s and early 60s in particular, and if you look at especially the rural areas of the South, in places like Mississippi and rural Georgia and rural Alabama, for example, people who engaged in nonviolent protest were putting their lives on the line. not only were they in danger of losing their lives, and it's true that relatively few people were killed, but still large numbers of people were brutalized, large numbers of people lost their jobs, large numbers of people were driven out of their communities and so on. And so I find your distinction, I understand, in fact, one of the points that the critics of nonviolence made was that it was asking people to make too great a commitment to allow themselves to be brutalized in the course of seeking to bring about change within the system or in the system. So I don't know if you want to expand on that, but with regard to the civil rights movement in the United States, I found your distinction there quite problematic.
Yeah. So your first point about aggregate statistics and complexity, you're absolutely right. And this is a first cut at the data. I hope what it does is generates interest in the topic enough that people will devote time and resources to getting at those complexities even better. And I myself am one of those, but can't do it completely alone. On your point about the
Time
US
has verified her findings, by the way.
Because it was viewed as civil rights. The fact, so let me just modify a little bit what I said about commitment levels. I agree with you. And I think that in general, the cases that I've talked about here, people's participation openly in these nonviolent campaigns is putting them at lethal risk. Absolutely. And I think you're right that that was the case in many places in the US civil rights movement. And I don't think that violent resistance can outperform nonviolent resistance in that regard, right? So they were at equal or greater risk from participating in armed insurgency in the same context. So the key is that there may be wide variation, but no matter what, as soon as one makes that leap and joins the armed movement, there are going to be now significant barriers to returning to normal life after the conflict is over, if it ever ends. Whereas for nonviolent campaigns, you are talking about a commitment, usually that, like enormous amounts of training and sustaining all kinds of social ostracism and everything else. And when you're finished, you return to normal life. And for many people, they participate in a way that is relatively casual, and that's welcome with civil resistance. So you're right, and I didn't mean to diminish that, but I still think that there's no advantage in terms of commitment for armed conflict.
I was rather surprised at the beginning that you talked about how you had never considered the argument that nonviolence was more effective than violence.
Yeah.
Because that's the argument that Gandhi made, it's the argument that Martin Luther King made, it's the arguments that Gene Sharp has been making for decades. Do you think you were unique in that, or is there sort of a lack of communication between the sides to the extent that they don't even know what the other side is claiming for why it should be effective, or the reasons for support for the other side? Because I certainly, all the times I saw it, it was never, this is the moral thing to do, though there's some of that, but this is the effective thing to do.
Yeah, so I think that in my field, I'm not unique. So I think there's a huge gap between what security studies scholars do and what people do in other fields that identify as like peace studies, peace science even, and stuff like that. There's like a huge gulf. I don't know why that's the case. I think that some of it has to do with connotations of words. So I prefer the term civil resistance literally to avoid running into the perception by others that I am getting behind this argument because I have a dog in this fight morally and want to push an agenda, right? And so that's another reason why I come out at the beginning and say that, because I want it to be clear that I started out a skeptic with like a neutral position on whether I would find the answer I got or not, because I think that like some people end up.
Here you go, Banana
There's a
Brains.
well-known study by Freedom House about how civic engagement and civil resistance actually improves transitions from authoritarianism and democracy. It was published by a group called Freedom House. It's a very relatively conservative pro-democracy research body, and some of the people who work there also work at this International Center on Nonviolent Conflict. And so that study was totally panned in a lot of circles because they said they have an agenda, you know? So I think it's really important to say this is a research finding, and I am now convinced, and my great hope is that we start talking to each other, these two different groups, and it no longer becomes a unique position to go through 4 years of graduate school, get a PhD, and never have heard of Gene Sharp before as a security studies person. I think that's tragic, and I hope to change it.
So I had a question about your methodology.
Yeah.
Did you have enough data points to ever analyze like these conclusions on the basis of like what governments they were under or not? Because I just get the feeling that, say, like a Slovak nationalist would have a much easier job than a Chinese student.
Yeah.
Did you have enough data points for that?
Yeah, so we were able to look at whether there's variation across regime types, and also wealthy versus poor regimes, very powerful regimes versus weaker regimes, and this sort of thing. The thing that's so crazy is that there's so much continuity across all different types of regimes. Again, and I think part of it is just because our data on regime type isn't quite as nuanced as it needs to be, because we're always focused on it from a top-down perspective. So we're getting our data points from other elites who tell us what kind of regime it is, and not as much paying attention to what ordinary folks think they're doing, you know? So we need better data. But another thing is just that, I mean, you're right that there is a distinction between whether you're making territorial claims or whether you're trying to oust a dictator. So interestingly, dictatorships are easier to overthrow than seceding, for instance, which is very difficult. Whether you're nonviolent or violent, it's just really hard to do. But China, you know, you bring up China, is such an interesting case. I mean, 2 years ago, there were 90,000 local protests in China observed that we know of. Last year, there was just a report leaked that there are 200,000 protests in China last year, 2011. And the fishing village of Wuhan has just ousted all of the local authorities and refused to let the national authorities in, blockaded the village. You know, it's a small village, 12,000 people, but 6,000 of them, half the population, were actively participating in this thing. So, you know, I think that the thing with China is that the regime is so good at managing the information environment, so it's very difficult for all these local disparate groups to sort of get together. And there is a type of discourse that's acceptable there, which is that it's okay to criticize the local government for poor performance, but it's not okay to criticize the central government. And if you do that, or you criticize the party, you're disappeared. So the key challenge for people in China that if they wanted to produce any type of change is really coordinating the different efforts, because there's plenty of it there, it's plenty disruptive, but it's very difficult for them to coordinate in a way that would make for meaningful change centrally.
I was wondering whether non-violent resistance is less effective or violent resistance is more effective in social revolutions as opposed to political revolutions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I don't have an empirical answer for it. I don't see... So I guess it depends a little bit on what the social revolution is attempting to achieve. But I don't see any really good theoretical reasons for why the insights that I've just talked about here shouldn't apply to other types. So if you give me $400 million, I can collect the data and find out.
As a student in the 70s, one of the most disturbing events that happened on the world scene for me was the 1973 coup d'etat in Chile, where it seemed to me that a country who went the right way about regime change was brutally repressed. Did your research, does it give you any insight on what was going on in that situation and how that vicious regime was able to stay in power?
Yeah, so regimes can repress so much as to make no type of resistance effective. And I think that there are certain types of regimes that establish such authority and such obedience over their followers that it's very difficult to launch any type of sustained challenge from the bottom up. And the interesting thing is that it took a while, and there were lots of oppositionists killed in the meantime, but in Chile they were eventually able to throw out Pinochet, and there was a civil resistance as part of that effort. And one of the things that's really interesting about the Chilean situation is that they relied so much on low-risk methods of dispersion to signal how many people were behind that effort. So one of the tactics that had actually been popularized under Allende was banging pots and pans. And so people would go home every night and just bang on pots and pans, and the entire, the major cities were just like reverberating with the sound. And another really effective tactic was singing. People would write little songs criticizing the regime, and the regime actually then outlawed public singing. And this was like a disastrous strategic misstep because it made the regime look completely ridiculous. So types of tactics that kind of put the regime in a position to where it has to do something ridiculous is good for the movement, because then everybody knows how silly it is, that the regime is a lie, that it's completely illegitimate, and it gets more people on board with this. So, ultimately, that over time, it took a long time, but there was a civil resistance campaign of these low-risk actions that then put people in a position to be more confident to vote no in the referendum to extend his power, right? So, other examples, in the Iranian Revolution, it was similar. There was a lot of singing inside houses at night. Tehran, very popular to do that. In Serbia, people would go home every single night. You had 95-year-old ladies and you had kids going home every night at 9 p.m., shutting off the lights for 5 minutes and then turning them back on and stuff like that. Just, you're not alone. That's the key, is to know that they're not alone, so that when there's a sort of strategic opportunity or moment around which people can unite, they know that people are going to show up.
I think I have two questions. I was fascinated by what a small percentage it takes to turn the tide. And so I guess the question I have, you talked about the pillars not being able to withstand after a certain point. Is that because the movement intentionally attacks certain pillars, or is it because it just happens that when it reaches a critical mass, those pillars begin to crumble? That's one question. And the second one, the larger question really is, our country has for so long is still really in the grip of what some have called the myth of redemptive violence. And so that even though it's not a secret that nonviolence has been more effective, more people's lives have been changed nonviolently than violently. Nevertheless, we still cling to violence as a way of resolving conflict. So, for example, with the build-up to Iraq, there was a nonviolent movement in Iraq that was pleading for support, and we chose to ignore that and to do it our way. I suspect that has a lot to do with the military-industrial complex. But I guess my bigger question is, what will it take to get us to change our ways? Given that you've even got empirical evidence that this works, what's the barrier?
Yeah. So the first question about how few people are necessary, 10% of the population is a huge revolution. I mean, the Iranian revolution had 10% of the population, and that was, up until then, I believe, the largest ever. And it is just impossible to ignore 10% of the population out. And so I think what it does is it shows an inevitability. And I think this is why Syria has had trouble, because they haven't been able to produce a sense of inevitability in Damascus. Almost everywhere else, but where it counts, they haven't. So in terms of your second question, what is it going to take? This is what I've been grappling with since this book came out. I can tell you that when I was going around talking about why violence is effective, I got almost no pushback. When I go around and talk about why civil resistance is effective, I have gotten more pushback. I get more emails. I get an email almost every single day from some random person around the world who wants to argue about it. Like, it is amazing. And I don't know what that's about. So I would love to, my research right now, I'm sort of doing this side project that's called The Myth of the Rational Insurgent. And it sort of breaks down 6 different myths that I think predominate about the utility of violence, about its...
I will also mention, since a lot of you seem really interested in this, Erica Chenoweth has a book, multiple books actually, but one that I would really recommend that is kind of based on a lot of this research is called Why Civil Resistance Works. It's quite good. Additionally, I would recommend, there's another book that she wrote, Civil Resistance, What Everyone Needs to Know, and what was the other one? On Revolutions, Unruly Politics in the Contemporary World. So, there you go. Those 3. She's written a lot of really good books on nonviolent resistance and how we can apply those to our modern day movements.
Necessity in many cases, about the things that it gives us that
does Erica Chenoweth use they them pronouns
give us and stuff like that, and it tries to break it down empirically and show why
I
they're
thought
myths.
It was she they.
And even with that, I get pushback. You know, and there are people for whom I think violence is serving very personal functions, and I don't know. You know, that's why I call it the myth of the rational insurgent, because rational insurgents should be willing to immediately and without any reservation substitute the method that works with the one that doesn't. And people are hanging on to violence for dear life. I don't know why.
Thank you for the lecture. I am interested in the diverging trends of effectiveness of violent and nonviolent conflict, and I was wondering if you can offer any explanations of why those trends are true, at least with the data that you have. So perhaps specifically, if you could comment on the role of media or social media in this. Do you think that maybe it's just that it's easier for people to communicate that we will be at this place tomorrow arguing for this, and whether perhaps media such as, you know, the CNN effect helps with this tactic of just gathering support for the cause?
I think you might be right, Banana Brains. I think they just use they them pronouns.
Showing nonviolent protesters as being the good guys and the repressive military as the bad guys.
Yeah. So I too am interested in the diverging trends, and I've thought about it a little bit. I think that the decline in effectiveness of violent insurgency can be somewhat related to the end of the Cold War, because I think that during the Cold War, both the USSR and the US were kind of actively supporting armed groups around the world that was increasing their effectiveness. The funding sources have since dried up, and so we see this huge decline in effectiveness. But that doesn't explain the rise of the effectiveness of nonviolent resistance. So I think there are a couple things going on. The first is that I think that there are what we would call demonstration effects, which is that people see it working somewhere and they think, that regime looks like ours. We could do that here. So there's almost, Doug McAdams, a sociologist, would call this cognitive liberation. Like the effectiveness of civil resistance in a case that looks like yours makes you suddenly think that this could happen for you too. And once that idea is in your head, there's really no going back. The second thing is the rise of NGOs devoted to the spread of civil resistance, effective civil resistance, and minimizing risk to the persons, and human rights NGOs. Jim Lawson, who was a prominent member of the Nashville lunch counter protests and the civil rights movement in the US at large, once told me that when he was trying to develop strategy and help mobilize people to participate in the Nashville lunch counter sit-ins, all he had was Gandhi's biography. And then he said to me, nowadays you guys have Gene Sharp, you've got your stuff, you've got how-to manuals, you've got the internet. All of this information is available. People are learning how to apply the technique more effectively. Another reason why I think it might be improving is for technology, but not quite in the sense that you mentioned it. So I'm a skeptic that social media and the news can actually help nonviolent campaigns better coordinate. I think it's actually better at helping regimes coordinate than activists. Coordinate repression, that is. But I do think there's something to having international media coverage in the sense that it makes people feel more emboldened to show up because they feel like somebody's watching. And this is not based on any type of empirical evidence other than the fact that I've talked to lots of people around the world, and they say that for them, it matters for them to know that there's a witness. You know, that they're not alone, people are watching. And if there's one thing we definitely have learned over the Arab Spring cases, it's that dictators are going to continue to do what they've always done. But for some reason, they don't want people watching anymore. The first thing they do is kick out the foreign journalists. Since when did they care, right? Something is shifting in sort of the global norms. And I think that having foreign journalists covering these things emboldens people to feel like they're not alone. I want to show one slide that I hope I have included here. Let's see. Demonstrating the hazard of, maybe I don't have it. No, I don't. Basically, it gets at the sort of hazard of over-relying on social media for a movement's success. And what it is it's a Facebook page that the Sudanese government developed. It's just a killer Facebook page. It's got a picture of like an activist, like an anarchist activist. They're wearing, you know, it's like hoodie and like the whole thing, and they have a Molotov cocktail and they've got their other hand in a fist, and it says protest such and such day and time, such and such square. You know, bring down Bashir,
General
Omar
Strike
Bashir
Tuesday
in Sudan. So 17,000 people RSVP'd for this protest. The first few people showed up. The regime had made that site, set it up. They hired some graphic artists to make it look really legit. The first few activists show up who are the organizers who think that they need to be there.
This is why you get skeptical about putting your information into a random website, even if it seems like it's made with good intention.
To get people in order. They're rounded up and tortured, and all they needed were their Facebook passwords. They had their email addresses. They just need their passwords. And then they go through and they get everybody else, right, that wanted to participate in this event. So I think actually regimes are better at manipulating social media than most activists are. It's very dangerous to over-rely on it. So what we can do is think about this in terms of like a battlefield. If your first line of communication is cut down, you use your second line of communication. You've got backups all the way back to where you're just like whispering stuff in the streets. In Poland, during the Solidarity movement, they actually developed their own alternative media. They had a printing press. They developed an underground newspaper. Well, this was very threatening to the Polish Communist Party. They seized the printing press, took all the paper and all the ink. So they don't have it, and it becomes illegal to have a private printing press in Poland. So what the Solidarity organizers did was literally have their members save up onion skins and deliver them to a particular set of locations where they then used rolling pins to roll them out into paper format, and then used coal and charcoal to write flyers and instructions to their members. So then the regime is forced to make a choice. Do we outlaw onions and people with smelly hands, or do we let this slide? No legitimate regime can get away with outlawing onions, you know? And so it puts them in this position. It helps the movement. And so they were able to maintain their open line of communication. It takes a lot of effort. But this is pre-Twitter. You know, these are the old days. And Solidarity won in the end. It took them 9 years, but they ultimately won the day.
Indeed, Rainbow Krampus. Good thinking. But yeah, there's all kinds of
Thank you so
nonviolent
much
ways to
for,
protest
the,
that are inconvenient for a
thoughtful
regime.
question and answer.
Sure. Thanks.
Today, of course, you saw what happened.
No, we're good, Rachel Maddow. Thanks. Thanks. Thank you. But yeah, see, guys? Like, we can do cool shit. We can do cool shit. I know that there are a lot of people itching and, like, getting all kinds of stressed out trying to, like, not plan, but, like, think of ways that, oh, man, everything's gonna go bad. We're gonna have to fight. Oh, my God. And, like, people are freaking out about that. You don't gotta freak out about that. All right? We're not at that point. We are in the point firmly of nonviolent resistance works. Should I go about my day singing in public? It won't hurt. People might look at you funny, but like, that's okay. That's okay. Maybe some people need some funny looks, you know? Maybe some people need a little jocularity in their lives. Sing the Itsy Bitsy Spider song. Google knitting and political resistance if you're interested. Absolutely. There's some fascinating stuff you can do with a handful of knitting skills. You know, like some again, there's a lot of really effective ways to organize. And I know, but like a lot of people on the left, for whatever reason, really want to jump to like the most extreme possible. Oh God. Oh God. A lot of people want to jump to the most extreme possible conclusion right away because they can't think of any other way to be effective. And the reality is there are way more effective ways to be effective. if you know what I mean. I know I'm babbling a bit, but like you can do cool stuff. Don't be limited.
My mom texted me suggesting I get groceries. It wasn't because of tariffs. It was because of the solar flares. My poor mom's brain is so roasted.
Wait, what about the solar flares? Thank you for the $5 dono. I am genuinely... Is your mom okay? Were there like dangerous solar flare events? I know sometimes like solar flares can like knock out power or, you know, have limited like EMP effects. Is that just like a conspiracy thing? Thank you for the $5 super chat though. Yeah, honestly, the far more boring and like less interesting thing is that you can do so much good in terms of like resisting.
Solar flares are krillin' me.
I understood that reference. Thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 sub, Sake Tanuki. But like, you know, there are far more effective things you can do than like picking up a gun. You can like, unironically, like dropping literature like other places, you know, getting people together to join your DSA, to join your local Democrats. Like that's Mobilize your local moms, you know? MILFs for freedom. There's lots of things you can do. You scallywags. Just get creative with it. What is the most ridiculous thing I can do these 4 years that if the regime bans, they'll look like clowns? God, I don't know. Fucking video game memes. Like, I'm not even really joking about that one. God. God damn. No. Ah, remnant of adversity. Ah, okay. Now I can summon those guys, I see. Can I ask the MILFs out? If they're into it? Got him. Got some spirit orbs. Can't fight all of you though. Sorry, boyos. That outcrop almost looks like I could drop down onto it, but I don't think I can. What all this shows in terms of the lecture, as well as the great chat, is that a doomer mentality is a sentence to oblivion and figuratively self-immolation because there's nowhere else to go logistically once that is adopted. I mean, all I have to say is that, like, yeah, don't doomer. Doomering is the death of hope, you know? Like, it is an abdication of your responsibility as, like, someone who wants to be... you know, part of a movement. A lot of people don't want to be parts of movements because they want to be a big goddamn hero, you know? And like, that's not what being in a movement is about. It's not about you. It's not about any individual part of the movement. That's why, like, that example of a protest movement incorporating, you know, funerals, like that's because it's a movement bigger than any one person. That's a powerful message to send, you know?
My BF told me once about an uber conservative person pinning a whole anti-vax plaque on a light pole near a hospital. If they have the audacity for random propaganda, I guess so should we.
We absolutely should, because you know what that propaganda does? It sends a message to everyone in your community that, hey, this is a safe place. Hey, no fucking kings here. You're among friends. You're among equals. And I think that's an important message to send in these times. For sure, for sure. Run, a fool. Don't be like Nietzsche's. Exactly. Yeah, put up pride stickers, put up like anti-Elon posters, put up anti-Trump posters. I promise, people will be appreciative of it. Go over here. Up here in particular. I think I have. You. God damn it. Frustrating. There we go. Nailed it. My daughter Rachel made a t-shirt design with a group of penguins holding up what the fuck signs, Blue Rose Creations if you want one. Hell yeah, that sounds dope as fuck. Thank you for sharing that, Lee Kastner. Blue Rose Creations. Figure out if there's any secrets out here that I missed. There we go. Nietzsche's gets teaches. Exactly. You understand me. Wanderer's pauldrons. Where could I'm missing like one of the crystals on this level. There's like one more crystal I need to break. I'm looking for it. What? Okay, we're not fighting on the stairs. Fuck you. There we go. And another one gone, and another one gone. Another one bites the dust. Hey, hey! What the fuck? Alright. It's fine. It's fine! Warren Buffett didn't need to finish this level, so why should I? Do these guys respawn? Oh, no, they don't. There's a finite number of them, I see. There we go. Got him. Got some better hunter shoes, too. Do I have hunter pants? Just want some hunter pants. I don't have hunter pants. Okay, so there are still 3 of them over here. Okay, so they do respawn eventually. Hunter where? Hunter there. Sorry, I know I'm not on my game tonight, guys. You're not getting a game Riverboat Jack tonight, and I'm real sorry about that. I wonder if I can get this bard to come with me. Sup, nerds? Got an idea? We need to raise our hand up like we're gonna giving our energy away for a spirit bomb. This is actually a thing in Chile when they protested for a new constitution. Nice. I like that idea. Not mad at it. Not mad at it even a little.
Hey, lift your head.
Buddy. Ow. Oof.
Today, just look straight ahead. Oh, wait, my eye. What you said.
Wait, why? Okay. I already talked to you. But I will buy your stuff anyway. That's a lie. You have nothing I want. Be gone.
Hey, wouldn't it be great if we could just talk?
Heavy attacks. Heavy attacks. What game is this? The first Berserker Kazan. Where do you suppose this crystal doth repose? Ow. Feels like a trap. Probably because it is right here. Just as I thought. Wouldn't the first Berserker be a Viking? Not in this world, but also I'm kind of dressed like a Viking. Okay. Not on either side here. I guess I continue up. Okay. Making progress. There we go. Done, son. Do I have to open these doors again? Ugh. Disgusting. Disgusting. Disgusting state of affairs. You dress like a Viking as in historical reenactment? Yes. Should I file my taxes this year? Probably. I understand questioning that. I certainly have. But yeah, you should probably file your taxes. Because let's put it this way. They're defunding the IRS. That means the IRS has less money to go after big tax cheats. So where do they use that money instead? They use that money to go after small people who aren't paying their taxes. You see? You see how that works out? Am I a good person? I think so. Kazan. I just want to find this orb. I don't know where the orb is. But also, I'm tired. Boop. Damn, my hair looks really good tonight. Completely unintentionally, mind you. Is this going to be a game stream? It was. We were watching a lecture on the effectiveness of nonviolence, and I feel like Erica Chenoweth lays out a really strong case. Nick Leftist, you got it. You got it. File your goddamn taxes. That's what I'm going to be doing all day tomorrow. I might stream movies or TV in the Discord or something. If any of you would like to join me, might stream Andor. I've been kind of hankering to watch that again. If any of you have not seen it. Also, just want to say, holy shit, guys.
File your taxes into sharp points in case you need to defend yourself against fascism.
Take that! How do you like that W-2? Yeah, you like it, don't you? Yeah! Yeah, you like it. Wait a minute. How much do you plan to watch? I don't know. As much as it takes for me to finish my taxes. But also, damn, on a gaming stream, we got like a solid, I guess, gaming and light politics stream. Solid like 300 people. Guys, we've come so far as a community and a channel. I'm really proud of you guys. And I'm really looking forward to starting next week. We're going to have an editor and like it's going to be really nice. I have high hopes. Because holy shit, I've been burning the candle at both ends and I'm starting to feel it. I had the breakdown I had yesterday was like one of my all-time biggest, and it was not cute. It was not a good look on me. An editor? Yeah. More YouTube stuff then? Or at the very least, the same amount of YouTube stuff more consistently. And also, like, I won't have... I will have time to, like, take care of myself. And that is something I have not been able to do for years. Well, GamerG, it's a bit more complicated than that, but yeah, maybe. Please, no, don't get arrested for trying to send anything to the fucking White House. It's not gonna be like a fun little goofy haha arrest. Hope you can take a break soon. Oddly enough, I'm hoping that doing my taxes tomorrow will be a little bit of a break. Dustin the Dam, thank you for the gifted membership, the sub over on Twitch. I appreciate it. The 2 gifted subs, my god. Three gifted subs, my god. Is there a safe way to do such a thing? No, don't send anything to the White House. There was literally a story just the other day of someone being charged by the Department of Justice for like saying, yep, something along the lines of like, yeah, we need to kill XYZ in the administration, and like anyone who participated, we need to kill him, and like don't do that. Like if you say that on social media, like they are looking for people who are saying or like doing that kind of joke. They are looking for that to make an example of people. It's why they're going after people who've like so much as looked funny at a Tesla dealership and trying to throw them in prison for 20 years.
If you send mail to the FBI, it's literally Fed posting.
Don't be a literal Fed poster, Chad. Thank you for sharing part of your personal story tonight. You're very welcome, Dustin. I hope that me sharing my story helps a little bit. And also, guys, like, you guys ever have questions about trans people or socialism or politics? Like, I'm usually, and in most ways, a very open book. You know, not only am I an open book, but mentally, well, we all know mentally where I'm at.
I am the intellectual equivalent of an assault rifle.
So, you know. I want more analog horror. Well, that's the other thing. That's the other thing. With an editor, I might be able to make more of that happen. I'll be able to have more time prepping my shows. More time, like, just being a human being. Guys, you have no idea how many times, how much of my day is wake up, do work, and then go back to sleep. It's a lot. And I did not take care of my body today, so after I finish this, I'm going to be going down, going and running on the elliptical. So I'm not quite done for the day either, but my accountability buddy, that's Clarice, is helping me to be strong. Body XP grinding. Yeah, well, I ate a lot of turkey tetrazzini today, and I ate a lot of beef stew last night. So I gotta keep it tight. Can finally make YouTube editor jokes. Well, maybe we'll see. We'll see. I'm just really excited. Yeah, honestly, GamerG, that's kind of how it feels. Like I work like nonstop to make this all work. Isn't red meat not as good as white meat? I don't know. I don't care. I feel like once you've gotten to that distinction, like, who cares? It's protein. Oh, Valeriana Damocles Marcellus. You're in the Eastern time. It took me a minute to catch up to where you're at. We'll see, Lady Raincloud. They approached me and offered, and we're gonna see how it works out. You're very good at curating your shows. Usually, today not so much, but Monday I should be. I spent my day today editing stuff to go up on YouTube through next Wednesday, so that they have a bit of breathing room to just like get their grounding, figure some things out, get a workflow. But if they can come through, it will be fucking huge. I love cooking too, Nick Leftist. It's a love I've come to too late in life. Whew. I made the turkey tetrazzini that I overindulged in today with a type of pasta that has like prebiotics in it, which means that it's much higher in fiber than usual. And it is gurgling my tummy, something fierce, but upping my fiber, super great decision. I hope they come through out of entirely selfish, I want Happy Jack reasons. I appreciate it. I do pretty good at being happy, though I am gonna say the reason I was late today for stream was specifically because I was putting on an outfit and the outfit broke, and it just like I could not move past it. I was just in a very unhappy malaise. Tetrazzini you can make with rice noodles? Yeah. You should do a kitchen show every now and then. I would love to do a kitchen show. I tried to do one once and it was an absolute disaster. That being said, if I ever have like a setup that can allow me to do a kitchen show, like if I ever make enough money to buy streamer house or whatever, I will endeavor to have a setup that can accommodate that. Word to the wise, don't smoke pot while sick. I coughed up a lung, but I regret nothing. Valeriana, just take an edible. But yes, also probably do neither of those while sick, actually. West Coast is best coast. Oh, look at me. I'm Konami the Alpha. It's only 1:30 in the morning. It's practically noon here. La-di-da-di-da. It's not 3:30 in the morning. I but jest. Humble chatter. I but jest. I remember the cooking stream. Chat was not pleased with the white lady burritos, the heathens. The white lady burritos. I wasn't making burritos. I was just making like turkey meat. The turkey meat is sublime. Also, the fucking beef stew I make is so good. It's so good. The secret is you got to put in like some roux at the end of making your stew. You got to put in the roux, and you got to put in like some chili powder, chipotle peppers, and a few other things. But you got to give it a little bit of a kick. I loved the taco meat with cottage cheese. I need to make that again. See, it's good. It's good. You just have to like melt it all down. Then you have like high protein, low calorie, like cheesy stuff. It's great. What is roux? Roux is kind of like it's like a thickening concoction that you can add to like a soup to give it more of a like a thicker consistency. But basically, it's the basic components of a roux are just like flour and butter in equal parts. You melt the butter, and then you mix in the flour, and you can also add in like some other things as well, like seasonings and whatnot, if you want to get fancy with it. But if you don't want to get fancy, all you need is butter and flour. Roux are so easy. Yeah, of course they are. My only problem is I eat my cottage cheese before I even cook with it. That will get you. That will get you for sure. Okay, guys, I gotta go before I lose motivation to move my little legs until I get sweaty. Bye, folks. Wait, what type of cut of beef? I love chuck. For a beef stew, I just get some stew meat. They're like Trader Joe's in particular has like a really good package of relatively affordable stew meat. You just cut it up. Like it comes already kind of cut up, but you got to cut it up into smaller cubes, and it is 10 out of 10. All right. Good night, you filthy animals. Jack in 10 minutes. You know it, Gamer G.
Technically, it's flour and butter in equal weights, but yeah, you have to cook it to get the raw flour taste out. 2 minutes for blonde, otherwise to your desired.
Indubitably. Yeah, you gotta keep it on the burner for a bit while you mix it all together. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 gifted Tier 1 subs. I appreciate the dickens out all you fine folks. And with that, I will see you all on Monday. I would love to see you guys tomorrow, but I am going to be swamped with taxes, and I'm trying real hard to finish them up tomorrow, but we'll see what happens. With that, folks, good night. Ra-da-da-da.
Come. I found over 1,700 times in the Word of God where this word is used, come, and that's not coming and the rest of the comes, but that's just come on. Preaching my heart out for 45 minutes to an hour on that one word, come. And it was one of our Lord's favorite words. Come unto me, come and drink, come and dine. Jesus said, come, come. And it goes on and 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 on. In its application. Come! What did Jesus say to his disciples? Come! There's no room for discussion, friend. Guess what? Come! Come! It commands obedience. Come! Haven't you had the Holy Ghost come in you? He was crucified for you. He died for you. He did everything for you. It's time for you to... On that one word, come. And it was one of our Lord's favorite words. Come unto me. Come and drink. Come and dine. Jesus said, come, come. And it goes on and 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 on.
Real quick, I also uploaded all of the Undertale like yellow playthrough, so all of that is now on YouTube, just in case anyone wanted to watch that. I also know my audio is absolutely terrible in that, but I still think it's fun. Anyway, bye!